Chapter 770. Chu Liuyue's heart seemed to have been touched by something. She looked up again. Although she still couldn't see anything clearly, she had an inexplicable feeling that she was being watched. That voice was definitely not her hallucination. That voice was calling her, and it sounded very intimate. However, that voice and tone were very unfamiliar. She seemed to have never heard it before. But somehow, it seemed vaguely familiar. There weren't many people who could call her that, and those who had the ability to reach here were even fewer. Who was it? The moment Chu Liyue looked up, the three people who were originally filled with anticipation and joy were all stunned. It's been a few years. How did this girl's appearance change so much? And she looks much younger. Lan Xiao, who was at the front, crossed his arms and touched his chin with one hand as he said in a daze. He only knew that when one cultivated to a certain level, they would never age. But that depended on their age. If a 20-year-old and an 80-year-old crossed that threshold at the same time, there would naturally be a huge difference. Other than that, he had never heard of anyone who could rejuvenate themselves. Lan Xiao, your eyesight isn't as good as mine. That girl isn't a girl. Diwu Zhangzi stroked his white beard and chuckled. You haven't seen that girl for a few years, and you actually forgot what she looks like? Let's see what you can say when she finds out. If it were any other time, Lan Zhan would definitely refute him. But at this moment, he couldn't care less. His eyes were staring straight at the girl below, and his brows were slightly furrowed. That's not right. He naturally remembered what the girl looked like, and logically speaking, he definitely wouldn't mistake her. But this girl, that's the girl. Duge Mabao, who had been silent all this while, finally spoke. Although his tone was cold, because his voice was too similar to a baby's, it sounded a little out of place, as if a child was pretending to be an adult. Lan Xiao and Diwu Zhangzi both fell silent for a moment. Although her appearance is different, the aura of this soul is definitely the same. Although Duge Mabao had a bad temper, he had always been very accurate in this aspect. Since even he had said so, then it must be true. Diwu Zhangzi widened his eyes in shock and lowered his head to take a closer look. However, the girl had already retracted her gaze. From their position, they could only see the top of her head. No wonder. When I first saw her, I subconsciously thought that she was a girl. I wasn't mistaken. Lan Xiao heaved a sigh of relief and glanced at Diwu Zhangzi. I didn't recognize her, but you? Diwu Zhangzi's face flushed red, and he was somewhat embarrassed. This isn't entirely my fault. Who would have thought that this lass would actually change her appearance? Everything was fine. How did it end up like this? Diwu Zhangzi's question was also what the other two wanted to know. Lan Xiao pondered seriously for a moment. Could it be that the little girl dislikes her appearance for not being beautiful enough? Was that why he changed his face? Duge Mabao looked at him as if he was an idiot. Damn pervert, do you think everyone is like you? You can change your face as you wish, but can this girl do the same? Besides, who in this world would think that her previous face wasn't beautiful enough? Lan Xiao didn't mind being called a damn pervert. Instead, he deeply agreed with the latter sentence. That's true. If it weren't for the fact that he doted on this girl, he would have already taken her face. That was really a rare beauty in this world. He raised his eyebrows slightly, and there was some admiration in his eyes. However, her current appearance is still a little young and inexperienced. When she grows up, she won't lose to the past at all. Speaking of which, why is she tormenting herself like this? Duge Mabao's face darkened. Not only did she change her face, but her body has also changed. These words made the other two's faces change slightly. To them, changing one's appearance was nothing much. However, it was different after changing her body. One must know that to a cultivator, the physical body was extremely important. Dantian. Core of essence. Yuan meridian. Once the physical body was abandoned, all these would be abandoned too. Moreover, that girl had the Tianjing Yuan meridian. The three of them fell into a short silence. Previously, they relied on their perception of the girl's soul. However, they didn't expect that other than this soul, the rest of the girl's body had been replaced. What exactly was going on? Do you think that the girl hasn't come for these few years? Could it be that she didn't forget, but something happened? Diwu Zhangzi said slowly. They had never thought of this possibility before. The girl was smart and cunning, and she was extremely talented and strong. Back then, she could still exchange a few blows with them. How could something have happened? From the bottom of their hearts, they didn't want to believe this guess. However, if this was true, what exactly happened to cause her to change her body and start all over again? Diwu Zhangzi said, let's wait first. It seems that the girl is now at odds with that 2-Tian baby. It won't be too late to ask her when she comes out. Dugu Mabao clenched his fists, and his body was filled with killing intent. Lan Zhao's eyebrows twitched. He was afraid that he would make a scene now and start a massacre. He quickly said, "Hey, Big Bao. Calm down. The girl hasn't come out yet. We'll talk about everything after we find out. What's the use of getting angry now?" Dugu Mabao gritted his teeth and said word by word, "Where the hell did that Rong Xiu kid go?" His Highness the Holy Sun, who was reading files at his desk, suddenly sneezed. He put down the brush in his hand, rubbed his eyebrows, and chuckled. "Seems like someone is thinking about me." He paused for a moment and finished reading all the files in front of him. Then, he got up and walked to the window. A snow-white figure suddenly flew down from the sky at high speed. The soldiers who were standing guard outside the hall all looked up in surprise. How long had it been? Why did His Highness's devil beast look like it had become stronger again? Shue Shue swept across the empty space in front of the hall, and a layer of frost actually condensed on the ground. Its figure had already entered the hall and disappeared in front of everyone's eyes. This time, Shue Shue still chose to break the window and enter. Fortunately, the hall was spacious enough, and the items used were all top-notch, so there was no need to worry about them being damaged. Shue Shue leaped into the room. Rong Xiu looked at it, and his thin lips curved up. "You sure know how to pick the right time." Shue Shue had already guessed what its master wanted it to do. It wagged its tail happily and looked at Rong Xiu with its icy blue eyes. After waiting for a while, Rong Xiu's smile deepened. "You can go first. I planned to bring Shue Shue along later, but it seems like I can't wait anymore." Shue Shue was very excited and ran out. Roar. Its roar shook the sky. It wasn't hard to tell how happy it was. Rong Xiu looked at its rapidly disappearing figure and raised his eyebrows. Even he felt a headache from the anger of those few people. Let Shue Shue go first. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 771. At this moment, Shue Shue had no idea that it had been sold by its master. It was overjoyed as it tore through space and plunged into it. It headed straight for Dahuang's swamp. After a while, Rong Xiu retracted his gaze. After pondering for a moment, he pushed the door open and walked out. "Greetings, Your Highness." Seeing him come out, the soldiers outside the door immediately bowed respectfully. "You may rise." Rong Xiu's expression had returned to calmness, and no one could tell that he was angry. 36 Respected Elder Ming hasn't returned yet? "Not yet, Your Highness." Rong Xiu narrowed his eyes slightly. Calculating the time, he had been gone for quite some time. According to 36 Respected Elder Ming's temper, he shouldn't have wasted so much time with the Ming division. He didn't intend to get involved in this. After all, the Ming division was too difficult to deal with. But now, he had to rush to Dahuang's swamp as soon as possible. Then, he had to find 36 Respected Elder Ming to discuss this matter. He thought for a moment, then walked forward. In the dim space, the surroundings were silent. However, Chu Luyue felt as if someone was whispering in her ear. Although she couldn't hear it clearly, it was still there. Only after a long time had passed did it gradually quiet down. She glanced at Taizu without batting an eyelid, but didn't see any abnormality in his expression. It seemed that Taizu really didn't hear anything. Strange, Chu Luiyue lowered her eyes and thought to herself. Could it be that someone deliberately let me hear these voices? But the other party doesn't seem to have any ill intentions, and even there's some undisguised joy and doting. It's as if they were very familiar with each other. Chu Luiyue thought for a while, but still came up with nothing. In the end, she closed her eyes, put away her thoughts, and continued to devour the 2 Tian babies' power. Bang! A crisp and soft sound was heard. Another fragment fell from the heaven-wrecking holy seed. Then, it flew silently toward Chu Luiyue and melted into the water screen, turning into a water droplet and entering her body. Seeing this scene, the three of them were all stunned. Even the furious Dugu Mabao was stunned. He stopped scolding Rong Xiu halfway. What is this girl doing? That layer of crystal was formed after the 2 Tian baby swallowed thousands of years of power. It was specially used to protect itself before it matured. She actually swallowed it just like that? Lan Xiao clicked his tongue. I didn't expect that the lass would become younger, and her ability would also increase. See, I told you that you can't just dig it out and give it to her, right? Now, the little girl can deal with it herself. Such top-notch existences usually had spirituality. It wasn't impossible to force it to submit, but if it carried unwillingness and anger, there would eventually be hidden dangers. Only by completely suppressing it and making it submit to him could it truly be considered his own. In that case, he wouldn't have to worry about using it in the future. Although the little girl was only gnawing on small pieces, it was still extremely outstanding. As long as there was enough time, she would definitely be able to rely on her own ability to take down the 2 Tian baby. Diwu Zhangze was secretly amazed. What is that water curtain? Can you guys see it? The lass is only a stage 5 warrior now, but with that water curtain, she can actually go against the 2 Tian baby and even have the upper hand. Lan Xiao looked over, shook his head, and said very honestly, I can't see it. Dugu Mabao held back for a long time before saying unwillingly, I can't see it. The other two looked at him in surprise. Biyao, you've been roaming the continent for many years and have seen more rare treasures than the two of us combined. There's actually something that you can't see the origin of? He had a fiery temper and was proud and stubborn. It wasn't easy for him to admit it. Dugu Mabao waved his hand in annoyance. It's so far away, and there's the 2 Tian baby's divine realm blocking it. What can you see? When the lass finishes dealing with the 2 Tian baby, can't she just say it herself? No matter what, it's not an ordinary item. Sheng Wanwan and the rest finally returned to Xiling after passing through several teleportation portals. The Pingliang Square was as noisy as usual. Suddenly, the largest teleportation portal in the middle started rotating slowly. Everyone turned to look at him, their faces filled with shock. Look! The teleportation portal is actually moving. Could it be that the third princess and the rest are coming back? It can't be, right? Didn't they just leave not long ago? Plus the time spent on the journey back and forth. They can't be coming back right after reaching Dahuang Swamp, right? But that teleportation portal is exclusively for them. Ever since they left, it hasn't been moved. Could it be that someone dares to use it without permission? Isn't that someone tired of living? While everyone was discussing, the surrounding black guards had already reacted quickly. The people on Pingliang Square were all chased down. The black guards surrounded the area, and the transportation array in the middle was also surrounded in a circle. The cold and stern black cavalry was ready for battle. It was as if they were welcoming a big shot. Seeing this scene, what else could the crowd not understand? To be able to make the black cavalry like this, the third princess and the rest must be back. In the face of such a serious aura, many people were silent. However, their eyes were still fixed on the center. Obviously, everyone wanted to see the results of the third princess leading the army to Dahuang's swamp to help His Majesty get the medicine. Soon, several figures appeared on the teleportation portal. Who else could it be but the third princess Shangguan? Standing beside her was Jianghu. The surrounding black cavalry immediately knelt down to welcome her. Welcome back, third princess. The onlookers naturally had to bow as well. In an instant, a large number of people knelt down in all directions. Rise. Shangguan said. Everyone stood up one after another. However, when they saw Shangguan's appearance clearly, many people were surprised. Shangguan's face was covered with a veil. Moreover, she was wearing a cloak with the hood on her head, almost covering half of her face. In such a dress, everyone could only see a pair of eyes, and the rest was tightly covered. Although it was winter at this time, because it was almost spring, it was not that cold. It was really a little strange for Shangguan to be dressed like this. However, ordinary people were naturally not qualified to ask these questions. A young man stepped forward. He seemed to be the general of the Black Cavalry. The last general Lu Shan greets the third princess. Eldest young master. Deputy General. Shangguan did not want to stay here any longer, so she directly said, all the Black Cavalry soldiers and disciples of various sects have worked very hard on this trip. Go back and rest. In addition, I have something important to discuss with the court officials. Pass down the order, all the major sect leaders and aristocratic family heads are to go to the palace immediately. Although Lu Shan was confused, he immediately said, yes. Digression, in the morning, the editor suddenly said that the names of the articles could not be punctuated, so everyone began to change the names. It was a chaotic morning. The meeting continued at 6 p.m. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from AI Network. Chapter 772. No one expected their return to be so sudden and so dull. Back then, the third princess led 1,000 black cavalry and several disciples from various sects to Dahuang Swamp. They had a powerful lineup and a magnificent momentum. But now, this was simply too surprising. Lu Shan and the others were also very puzzled. According to the plan, the third princess and the others should be back in about a month. But how long had it been? Moreover, logically speaking, they should have notified them before they came back. But they didn't receive any news at all. If they hadn't seen the teleportation array start to move, they wouldn't have known that they were back. Shangguan's face was covered with scars and couldn't be completely covered with a veil. Helplessly, she could only cover it with a hood. Although it looked a little strange, it could be completely covered. How many pairs of eyes in West Hill were watching her? Once her disfigured appearance was seen by others, who knew what kind of storm it would cause. Therefore, even if this appearance would cause people to speculate and discuss, she still insisted on it. She wanted to take a carriage back to the palace, but they came back too suddenly, and it was definitely too late now. After giving instructions, Shangguan directly lifted her feet and walked forward. Jianghu was half a step behind her and walked with her. After a short moment of silence, the remaining black guards and disciples of various sects also dispersed. This scene was actually very awkward. The onlookers looked at each other. What's going on? Just like that? I thought that we would come back in glory. This is different from what I expected. Don't you see that the Black Cavalry has lost a lot of people? And the disciples of those sects seem to have lost a lot. It seems to be true. It seems that there are about 300 to 400 Black Cavalry who didn't come back. Hiss, the casualties in this trip to Dahuang Swamp are so heavy. It was originally a dangerous place, so this result is normal, right? In the past, when Vice Admiral Mu led the army, more than half of them were killed or injured. But at that time, it was a rebellion in Dahuang Swamp. Now that Dahuang Swamp has been pacified, isn't it a little strange? The third princess also felt a little strange when she saw this. But since it was so tragic, it should be because they had seized a lot of medicinal herbs that His Majesty needed, right? Everyone discussed in low voices. All sorts of voices kept entering Shang Wanwan's ears. Anger surged in her chest, and all the blood in her body rushed to her head. Her face under the veil was torn apart again because of her ferocious expression. This made her even more annoyed. Those words were like invisible slaps that ruthlessly slapped her face. She quickened her pace. Mu Qinghe did not leave with them. Instead, she stayed behind to take care of the black cavalry. After Lu Sen respectfully sent off Shang Wanwan and the others, he looked at Mu Qinghe in confusion. He was a little anxious. Deputy General, why didn't you inform us that you were coming back this time? This welcome is too hasty. Mu Qinghe shook her head. I've kept this matter in mind, so I didn't have time to inform you. It's fine. Immediately send people to bring the injured black cavalry back to recuperate. In addition, Tian Zhuangzhuang and the others will report the casualties to you. I'll leave them to you to deal with the aftermath. Lu San's heart sank when he heard this. The last general understands. He looked up and quickly scanned the surroundings. He realized that the number of casualties might be much higher than he had expected. His mood became heavier. Dahuang Swamp was indeed full of danger, but ever since Mu Qinghe led the troops to quell the rebellion a few years ago, it had actually become much better. Logically speaking, such a situation shouldn't have happened. However, he didn't dare to ask too much and could only follow Mu Qinghe's instructions. As for the disciples of the other sects, the situation wasn't any better. They were different from the Black Cavalry. The Black Cavalry was an army, and their duty was to obey. However, the relationship between the various sects and the Tianling royal family wasn't completely submissive. They respected the Tianling royal family, and at the same time, the Tianling royal family also respected them. Those who could enter these sects were undoubtedly geniuses. Moreover, those who were selected to go to Dahuang's swamp this time were 1 in 100 and were extremely outstanding. Now that they were dead and injured, it was a huge loss to the various sections. Why are there only 3 people from the Purple Shao Sword sect? Didn't they go with 10 people when they went? They're the ones who suffered the most losses, right? The other sects also suffered casualties, but none of them are like them, I think. Wait, where are the people from the Chongshu Pavilion? Why haven't they appeared yet? As soon as this was said, everyone fell silent for a moment. Countless gazes quickly scanned the scene, but they didn't see anyone from the Chongshu Pavilion. Only 3 people went to the Chongshu Pavilion. In addition, Chu Luiyue and Chang Wanzhou had recently become famous, so they were especially eye-catching. But now, not a single one of them had appeared. Could it be that the people from the Chongshu Pavilion are all? Someone in the crowd softly said half a sentence. He didn't say the rest, but everyone knew what he meant. Everyone's expression became complicated and subtle, and their eyes were all different. It wasn't easy for the Chongshu Pavilion to produce 2 top geniuses. Were they really going to die? Without Chu Luiyue and Chang Wanzhou, the Chongshu Pavilion situation would definitely become more difficult in the future. Spring Breeze Restaurant. In the private room, Shui Lu, and Jian Fengqi were sitting facing each other by the window. Shui Lu hugged the pipa, but didn't play it. She only looked at Jian Fengqi opposite her and asked, "So, everything went smoothly?" "Of course, there won't be any problems with me taking action personally." Jian Fengqi leaned lazily against the back of the chair, his sword-like eyebrows slightly raised with undisguised arrogance. Shui Lu sneered. "Those 2 aren't in West Hill, of course it's more convenient for you to do things." Jian Fengqi didn't deny it either. When his father urged him to go to Dahuang Swamp, he refused to go no matter what and insisted on staying in West Hill. Wasn't that all for this? Anyway, things are progressing well now. Next, we just need to. Suddenly, there was a commotion on the street outside the window. Jian Fengqi immediately fell silent. Shui Lu opened the window and looked down. A trace of shock flashed across her face. The Black Cavalry? Jian Fengqi sensed that something was wrong, so he went over to take a look. Then, he frowned. What, Shang Wanwan is back? On the wide street, the black cavalry was on alert on both sides. A few figures were coming from the middle. The person in front was wearing a cloak and a veil, but Jian Fengqi recognized her at first glance. She was Sheng Wanwan. And beside her was Jiang Yucheng. There were also a few servants following behind the two of them, all of them maintaining a distance that was neither too close nor too far. Shouldn't they be back in a month or so? Why would they? Shui Lu asked in confusion. Jian Fengqi narrowed his eyes and said, "She's back after finding medicine for His Majesty. It should be a big celebration. Why is she so timid?" With that, he flicked his finger. "I'd like to see what she's feeling so guilty about, hiding it so well." Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 773. Wait. As soon as Jian Fengqi moved, Shui Lu grabbed his wrist before his force could fly out. Because of this distraction, he was unable to launch his attack. Jian Fengqi glanced at her with dissatisfaction. "Little Lu, why are you stopping me? Maybe there's a shocking secret hidden under that veil." He knew Sheng Wanwan too well. Sheng Wanwan had always valued her appearance very much. She also liked to dress herself up perfectly to show off to the world and win praise. She was very particular about her makeup and hair accessories at all times. She didn't allow any mistakes to be made. Today, she was wearing a veil for the first time. She even wore a hood to cover herself up tightly. It would be strange if there wasn't something fishy going on. She rushed back from Dahuang's swamp in such a hurry without any news beforehand. It was obvious that she had made a sudden decision. Under such circumstances, her actions were even more intriguing. Shui Lu glared at him and flung his wrist away. "If I didn't stop you, did you really intend to make things difficult for her in public? Are all those black cavalry soldiers useless? If you make a move 1 second ago, they might come knocking on your door the next second." Jian Fengqi coughed, retreated, and smiled eagerly in a fawning manner. "I was just joking. Little Lu, don't be angry. There's no need to be angry over someone like her, right?" Shui Lu also understood that Jian Fengqi knew the severity of the matter, so she didn't continue to say anything. She turned around and saw that Sheng Wanwan and the rest had already left quickly. She was a little suspicious. Why do they look like they're in a hurry? Are they in a hurry to return to the palace? Jian Fengqi rubbed his chin. "I knew that there must be a shameful secret hidden under that veil. The palace is her territory. Of course she's in a hurry to return. Fortunately, I've already done what I need to do." If Sheng Wanwan had returned earlier, he might have been in trouble. Thinking of this, Shui Lu heaved a sigh of relief. "You've handled this matter well." Jian Fengqi had a bright smile on his face, and he was carefree and unrestrained. "Little Lu has always been reluctant to praise me. Today is a rare occasion." Shui Lu couldn't be bothered with him and changed the topic. "Since they're back, the rest of the troops should be back too. Right?" Jian Fengqi's eyes flickered. This meant that Mu Hongyu and Chu Luyue should be behind them. He glanced outside a few more times, only to see that after Sheng Wanwan and the rest left, no one followed them. Just when the two of them were puzzled, a voice came from outside the window. "Haven't you heard?" 2. Chu Luyue sat cross-legged and focused on her cultivation. Her aura continued to grow stronger. Diwu Zhangzi finally spoke. "We don't know how long it'll take for the girl to come out." Lan Xiao and Dugu Mabao realized this too. Lan Xiao was a little worried. "But if we don't see the girl today, we'll have to wait another month. The night of the crimson moon only happened once a month." Dugu Mabao turned and left. "So be it. We've waited for a few years. Why should we be afraid of a month?" The other two looked at each other and saw the shock in each other's eyes. He had always been the one who stuck to the girl the most. Now, he was willing to be the first to leave. Diwu Zhangzi followed and asked. You're really not going to wait any longer? Dugu Mabao said coldly. If we wait any longer, will she see us? Diwu Zhangzhou was speechless. The girl was trapped in there. Of course, she couldn't see them. She's cultivating. Let her cultivate in peace. As for meeting, she's already here. What difference does it make if we meet earlier or later? Based on her current strength, she would definitely need a month to completely devour the 2 Tian baby. What's the hurry? Big Bao is right. Lan Xiao nodded in agreement and followed. Staying up late is bad for the skin. I have to go back and catch up on sleep. The remaining 2 quieted down. A moment later. You're a living dead. Why do you need to catch up on sleep? Lan Xiao, I'll ask you again seriously. Are you sick? Lan Xiao felt sorry for himself and was very resentful. He secretly thought that these 2 didn't know how to appreciate his beauty. What do you know? The girl likes beautiful people. Sigh, actually, I can understand. You 2, one young and one old. No matter how hard you work, you can't compare to me. What's there to compete for? Diwu Zhangzhe reminded objectively. Have you forgotten Rongxiu? You've changed so many faces, but none of them can compare to him. The beautiful fantasy in Lan Zhao's head was instantly shattered. He gritted his teeth and cursed. Damn it. Dugu Mabao suddenly sneered. Speak of the devil. Just as he was thinking about it, it came. His figure flashed, and he quickly rushed up. It was the last moment before dawn, and the forest was dark. The rustling wind blew past and quickly disappeared. Not long later, Red Moon Desert. Suddenly, a black spatial crack appeared in the void. Immediately, a snow-white figure jumped out from it. Shue Shue shook its body, and a lot of frost fell. Under the red moonlight in the night sky, it reflected a faint light. It looked around, sniffed, and began to search for Chu Luyue. It seemed to be Russell. At this moment, a strange sound suddenly came from below. Shue Shue looked down. It saw that there seemed to be something moving under the undulating sand dunes. It blinked, then as if it suddenly thought of something, it looked up. A red moon was hanging high in the black night sky. A hint of fear flashed across Shue Shue's eyes. Without a second thought, it turned around and ran. What a coincidence. But before it could run out, it heard a soft and gentle voice. Little snowflake, long time no see. Why are you running? Shue Shue didn't even turn its head, and its claws dug even harder. However, not only did it not run forward, but its body kept moving backward, and it even fell to the ground. When it was pressed on the cold sand, Shue Shue finally realized that it was still too inexperienced. It made a prompt decision, and it was very decisive. It lay down obediently. It even wagged its tail to express its joy. Little snowflake has become smarter after not seeing you for a few years. The voice came closer, as if the person was right beside its ear. Shue Shue's body stiffened, and it didn't dare to move. It whimpered softly, and its pair of ice blue eyes were watery, looking very docile and cute. A wise man submits to circumstances. A moment later, a baby-like voice sounded coldly. Where's your master? Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 774. Where's your master? Shue Shue was stunned for a moment when she heard this, but she quickly reacted. His master's calm and indifferent eyes immediately appeared in his mind. Shue Shue slowly widened its eyes. No wonder. No wonder master didn't agree to it when it wanted to come, but he suddenly allowed it. It naively thought that it was because it had been cultivating diligently recently and increased its strength. It didn't expect, it had been betrayed by its master. Master must have known that it was the night of the crimson moon, so he deliberately let it come. And from the looks of it, they weren't in a good mood now. Was this the reason why master let it come first? Shue Shue was heartbroken and regretful. It thought to itself that it was foolish to form a contract with him back then. So what if it was a divine beast? It was still betrayed, wasn't it? Shue Shue lowered its head dejectedly, looking like it had nothing to live for. Seeing its expression, Dugu Mabao understood what was going on. It couldn't help but sneer. He's really straightforward. He sent you here and let you take the blame? Lan Xiao touched his face, and his voice became gentler. What's the use of being too good-looking? He has a bad heart. That girl must be blind to like him. Dugu Mabao was silent for a moment, and its voice became colder. Who are you calling blind? Lan Xiao. What did I say? I didn't say anything. Diwu, little Shue Shue is quite pitiful. It has already taken the blame a few times. Be gentler this time. Diwu Zhangze said faintly. Do you think it's my turn to do anything? Could they stop Dugu Mabao from doing anything he wanted? Shue Shue thought that it had a chance of survival when it heard Lan Xiao pleading for it, but Diwu Zhangze's words made it lose all hope. It lowered its head pitifully, and its head was pressed against its paws. It was very uneasy. After a moment, Dugu Mabao said, Come here. Mystic Forest. The long night passed. A layer of bright light gradually lit up the sky, plating the clouds with a layer of gold. This added a bit of warmth to the originally lonely and desolate mystic forest. However, the few people in the forest didn't feel better. Because the mother tree in front of them still did not move. As for Chu Luyue, he was nowhere to be found. He had no intention of coming out. Even Qin Yi didn't know how long he had to wait. At this moment, they were completely unaware of what had happened in the Mirror Lake and the Red Moon Desert. The West Hill. After the Black Cavalry escorted Sheng Wanwan, Jiang Yucheng, and the others away, someone said something that immediately caused the whole street to boil. Are you serious? There were a total of 3 disciples from the Chongshu Pavilion, including Chu Luyue and Cheng Wanzhou. Logically speaking, they should have no problem protecting themselves. How could they all die? Where did you hear this news from? Of course it's real. When the 3rd princess and the others came back, I was at Pingliang Plaza. The Black Cavalry and the sect disciples had all returned. Only the Chongshu Pavilion was empty. If he's not dead, then what is? I saw it too. They really didn't come back. That's impossible. So many people who were weaker than them came back alive. Who can be sure about such things? About 300 to 400 people from the Black Cavalry died. The 3 disciples from the Chongshu Pavilion probably acted together and were completely annihilated. This time, the Chongshu Pavilion really suffered a huge loss. That's right. There was just a slight improvement, and now Chu Luyue and Cheng Wanzhou are gone. What a pity. Just as the crowd was discussing fervently, a figure suddenly jumped down from upstairs and directly jumped in front of the few people who were talking. He then grabbed the collar of the man who spoke first. What did you just say? The man who spoke was caught off guard and was easily grabbed by the person. His collar was tightly gripped, and he almost couldn't breathe. Who are you? He was enraged and instinctively wanted to curse out loud. However, when he took a closer look, he got a shock. Young Master Jian? Many people in Shiling City recognized Jian Fengqi's face. Young Master Jian, let's talk nicely. Jian Fengqi stared at him and asked word by word, I'm asking you, who did you say died? The man was panicking. He was afraid that Jian Fengqi would twist his neck and break his neck. He hurriedly said, It's those people from the Chongshu Pavilion. I'm not sure. Young Master Jian, please spare my life. The people from the major sects have already gone back. If you want to know, you can ask them. Jian Fengqi pushed him away, went on his toes, and swiftly headed for Pingliang Square. According to the time, there should still be many people who hadn't gone too far from Pingliang Square. The man who was pushed away struggled to get up and looked in the direction Jian Fengqi left, still in shock. The crowd around them also quieted down because of this. Someone couldn't help but murmur, why does the young master of Dragon Teeth Mountain care so much about what happened at the Chongshu Pavilion? I heard that Dragon Teeth Mountain and Chongshu Pavilion have a good relationship. I wonder how the people of Chongshu Pavilion will react when they hear this news. Upstairs, Shui Lu looked out of the window. Jian Fengqi's figure quickly disappeared from her sight. Her willowy eyebrows furrowed slightly. This time, I'm afraid things are going to get out of hand. Jian Fengqi moved quickly and soon bumped into Zhu Hong and the others who were on their way back. At a glance, they were all injured, and their auras were extremely weak. Jian Fengqi's heart skipped a beat. Zhu Hong. Zhu Hong looked up. Young master. Jian Fengqi quickly went to them and asked anxiously, what's going on at the Chongshu Pavilion? Digression, the title of the book should be changed in the next 2 days. Don't take it off the shelves just because it's unfamiliar to you. You must keep me here. Tomorrow at 12 o'clock. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 775. Seeing how anxious he was, Zhu Hong hurriedly said, young master, don't worry. It's a long story about the people from the Chongshu Pavilion. Seeing Zhu Hong's reaction, Jian Fengqi felt a little relieved. Things might be different from what those people were saying. Zhu Hong took a deep breath. Young master, let's go back first. It's not convenient here. On the streets, anything they said could be overheard by someone with ulterior motives. Although Jian Fengqi was anxious, he could only suppress it. Then, he glanced at the few people and frowned slightly. Where's Hongyu? Zhu Hong pursed his lips. She's with the people from the Chongshu Pavilion. Jian Fengqi's heart sank. Young master, don't worry. They're fine now. Zhu Hong saw that his expression was not right and quickly added. Jian Fengqi was even more confused. Chu Luiyue, Mu Hongyu, and the others did not come back with the main group, but Zhu Hong said that they were fine. What in the world had happened? Countless questions surfaced in his mind, but Jian Fengqi suppressed them and looked at them again. These people were all injured to varying degrees. Zhu Hong was still fine, but the others could barely stand. Let's go back to Dragon Teeth Mountain first. Dragon Teeth Mountain. As soon as the seriously injured people returned, they were immediately sent for treatment and recuperation. Zhu Hong was the only one left. He was in good health and was the leader, so he naturally had to stay. After they returned to the mountain, Jian Shai heard the news and immediately rushed over. Zhu Hong explained the ins and outs of the matter to Jian Shai and Jian Fengqi in detail. This time, it's all thanks to Miss Chu's help that we could come back safely. Otherwise, the consequences would be unimaginable. After that, the room fell into silence. The father and son's expressions were very solemn and serious. After a while, Jian Shai said, so now, Chu Luiyue is missing, and the rest of the people are still in the mystic forest looking for her whereabouts? Zhu Hong nodded. Originally, we also wanted to stay and help, but considering that our people were all injured, even if we stayed, we might not be able to help much. We might even become a burden to everyone, so in the end, we chose to come back with the main group. Jian Shai heaved a long sigh. That's right. It's only right that you do this. In a place like the Great Desolate Swamp, unless one was a top-notch expert, anyone could become trouble for others. Not to mention the injured ones. Jian Fengqi suddenly said, are you saying that Snapper and Chu Luiyue have been working together since the beginning? Yes. At that time, the few of them had taken the lead and headed into the depths of the forest, just in time to avoid that accident. Because of that, none of them were injured when we met again. Jian Fengqi had mixed feelings. Mu Hongyu and Chu Luiyue were very close, so it was normal for them to work together. I just don't know what the current situation is like, master, young master, don't worry. With Qin Yi and Lei Laosi around, nothing should happen to Snapper and the rest. Zhu Hong was actually a little worried, but he could only place his hopes on Qin Yi and the rest now. As for Chu Luiyue, He didn't dare to mention it again. The possibility of her surviving was simply too small. Jian Shai suddenly asked, "The Qin Yi and Lei Laosi you're talking about? Who exactly are they? Have they really been staying in the mystic forest to protect that legendary fiend?" Zhu Hong explained, "The two of them are very strong. Even in the entire Tianling dynasty, they're definitely top-notch experts, but we don't know the two of them. However, they did seem to have stayed in the mystic forest for a very long time. As for the one they were protecting, to be precise, it was a 9-colored heavenly pheasant. After that, it successfully broke through and finally became a red-tailed phoenix." 9-colored heavenly pheasant? The father and son both exclaimed in shock. Isn't that the same as the fiend that the princess had a contract with? If it were any other 9th-grade fiend, they definitely wouldn't have such a huge reaction. However, it just had to be a 9-colored heavenly pheasant. For a moment, the few of them didn't speak. After a long while, Jian Fengqi muttered softly, "What a coincidence. It's actually Lu Yu who contracted that 9-colored heavenly pheasant." "Oh, no, it's the red-tailed phoenix." Chu Luiyue originally looked similar to the princess, and now that she contracted this fiend, it made one's imagination run wild. It's a pity that she's nowhere to be found now, and I don't know if I can still find her. If she comes back in the end, she definitely won't be able to avoid Shang Wanwan making things difficult for her. Thinking about Shang Wanwan, Jian Fengqi suddenly felt energized. "Oh right, how's the third princess?" Zhu Hong was dazed for a moment as if he didn't quite understand what Jian Fengqi was asking. Jian Fengqi rephrased his question. "Is there something wrong with her body or her face?" Zhu Hong shook his head. I don't know." Back then, the ones standing near Shang Wanwan were Jiang Yucheng, Mu Qinghe, and the rest. In addition, she quickly covered herself up tightly afterward, so even fewer people saw that her face was injured. Zhu Hong and the rest's attention was on Chu Luiyue, Mu Hongyu, and the rest, so they naturally didn't know anything about this. Knock knock. There was a knock on the door. "Master, the third princess has summoned all the people from the various sects and families to the palace to discuss important matters. The palace servants are already waiting outside." Jian Shai stood up. "Zhu Hong, you should go back and recuperate first. As for Hongyu and the rest, you don't have to worry too much. She's my disciple. If anything happens to her, I'll still be there as her master." Hearing him say this, Zhu Hong instantly heaved a sigh of relief. It seems like the master has made preparations. I'll go to the palace to take a look first. Feng Qi, go back and make a trip to the Chongshu Pavilion and tell them to relax first. I wonder how the rumors outside have spread now. Jian Fengqi actually wanted to go to the palace very much, but after hearing this, he changed his mind. "I know. Don't worry." Jian Shai turned and left. Not long after, Jian Fengqi set off for the Chongshu Pavilion. Just as Jian Shai said, all kinds of news had spread throughout the entire Xiling city in a short period of time. The sudden return of Shang Wanwan and the rest shocked everyone. In addition, the series of strange reactions they had after returning caused many speculations. The news that none of the Chongshu Pavilion disciples returned spread to countless people's ears as if it had grown wings. Everyone had different reactions, both openly and secretly. When Jian Fengqi rushed to the Chongshu Pavilion, Yuqi Song had already followed the palace servants to the palace. Tianling Palace. Shang Wanwan returned to Huayang Palace and chased everyone out. She took off her cloak, sat in front of the bronze mirror, and carefully took off her veil. A face covered in scars and badly mutilated appeared in the bronze mirror. Shang Wanwan stared at the face in the mirror as blood surged between her teeth. Thinking of how she still had to meet those people later, she suppressed the anger in her heart and took out a box of cream from the cabinet beside her. She carefully dipped it in and applied it to her face. Just as the cream touched her face, she instantly felt a burning pain. She finally couldn't help but cry out in pain. Ah! Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from LoveNet. Chapter 776. Hearing her scream, Chan Yi, who was waiting outside, was startled and immediately asked, "What happened?" She immediately asked, "Your Highness, what's wrong? You're not allowed to come in." Shang Wanwan immediately shouted. "Yes." Chan Yi quickly replied with a slight frown. When Her Highness returned, she hid herself very well. Chan Yi had already vaguely guessed something. Now, it seemed like she was most likely right. How did she end up like this after going to Dahuang Swamp? Chan Yi looked up at the palace servant standing in the courtyard with a cold gaze. When everyone heard Shang Wanwan scream, they knew something was wrong. Sensing Chan Yi's dangerous gaze, they lowered their eyes and didn't even dare to breathe loudly. "All of you may leave." "Yes." Hearing this, everyone hurriedly left as if they had been pardoned. After they left, Chan Yi looked at the tightly shut door again. The intense burning sensation caused Shang Wanwan's mind to go blank. She hurriedly looked at the bronze mirror, only to see that the wound on her face, which she had just applied the cream on, was faintly black. It was as if she had been scalded. The curled skin and flesh looked as if it had been burned by flames. It was slightly curled and slightly charred. Even though it was only a small patch, it was very obvious. So the pain just now was because I was really burned. Shang Wanwan's face was filled with shock. What's going on? The cream was clearly a superior medicine for treating scars. How did it end up like this? She hurriedly looked at the box in her hand. That's right. This is the cream. It wasn't that she hadn't used it before. Occasionally, when she bumped into something and got a scar, she would recover quickly with this. But now, Shang Wanwan threw the cream to the side and leaned closer to the bronze mirror. Looking at the wound on her face, she was filled with worry. In order to retrieve the dancing lotus as soon as possible, she had sent people to gather the people from the various sects and aristocratic families the moment she returned. She wanted to use the cream to heal the wound on her face slightly so that she could be seen. However, she didn't expect that not only did it not heal, but it also ended up like this. Shang Wanwan was very scared. Her body trembled slightly, and her lips were pale. If she really couldn't recover her looks, she didn't dare to use the cream anymore, but what else could she use? Shang Wanwan sat in front of the bronze mirror for a long time, conflicted and in pain. This continued until Chan Yi knocked on the door again. "Your Highness, all the sect leaders and patriarchs are about to reach Minghua Palace. Do you want me to help you with your grooming?" Shang Wanwan suddenly came back to her senses. Only then did she realize that she had not done anything for such a long time. Now that she was in such a sorry state, if others were to see her, they would definitely mock her. She gritted her teeth. "That's not necessary. Ben Gong will go to the hot springs." There was hot spring water behind Huayang Palace. Yes. Chan Yi didn't dare to ask any more questions and respectfully agreed. Shang Wanwan walked to the back alone, opened the side door, and entered the hot spring area. Jiang Yuqing returned to the palace with Shang Wanwan. However, Shang Wanwan wasn't willing to face anyone with that face. Jiang Yuqing was also very tactful. After saying a few words, he left Huayang Palace. After that, he went straight to Qingfeng Palace. After leaving for so long, what he cared about the most was Her Majesty's current situation. When he arrived at Qingfeng Palace, the security was still tight. Seeing him arrive, the palace servants bowed in unison. "Greetings, Prince Consort." The wedding date of Jiang Yuqing and Shang Wanwan had been set. That was what the palace called it. Jiang Yuqing nodded and asked as he walked in. As he walked in, he asked, "Has Her Majesty shown any signs of waking up during this period of time?" The palace servants shook their heads. This was originally within Jiang Yuqing's expectations, but he was still somewhat disappointed when he heard it. Everything was done cautiously and cautiously. Even if he had poisoned her too much back then, she should have woken up after such a long period of recuperation. However, there was no change in Her Majesty. This made him even more irritable. Just as Jiang Yuqing was about to go in and take a look in person, the palace servants outside reported that everyone had arrived one after another and asked him to go over. In desperation, Jianghu could only withdraw his hand that was about to push the door open. After telling everyone to take good care of Her Majesty, he turned around and left. Qingfeng Palace regained its peace again. In the room, Shengguanyu, who had been in a coma for a long time, moved his fingers gently. Minghua Palace. The leaders of several major sects gathered here again. In addition, the masters of the aristocratic families in Xiling City were basically all here. Everyone was divided into two sides, greeting each other politely, but they all had their own thoughts in their hearts. Such a battle formation could not be said to be small. Shang Wanwan and Jiang Yuqing had not appeared. In the main hall, discussions gradually arose. Her Highness the Third Princess suddenly brought people back from the Dahuang swamp and gathered so many people. It seems that something really happened. I heard that there were heavy casualties in this trip to the Dahuang swamp. Nearly 400 people of the Black Cavalry alone died. That's not all. The disciples of all the major sects also suffered injuries. Didn't you see how awful Song one of the Purple Shao Sword sect looked? 10 of them went this time, and only 3 came back alive. This should be the most miserable family, right? Although everyone lowered their voices, everyone present was basically a top-notch powerhouse. How could they not hear it? Song Wan had indeed heard the news long ago. Until now, he had not calmed down. He sat in his seat with a livid expression. His fists were clenched tightly, and the veins on the back of his hands were popping out. However, he forced himself to endure it. Because those who could come here had high statuses. Unless he had no choice, he was also unwilling to offend anyone. Right at this moment, the announcement sounded again. The pavilion master of the Chongshu Pavilion has arrived. The hall instantly quieted down. Everyone looked over at the same time with different expressions on their faces. They were the most well-informed people in Xiling City and naturally knew that none of the 3 disciples of the Chongshu Pavilion had returned. This basically meant that they all died in the Dahuang swamp. Not long ago, the Chongshu Pavilion was still in the limelight and held on to the name of the 4 major sections. Everyone thought that by relying on Chu Luyue and Chang Wanzhou, the Chongshu Pavilion situation would gradually improve. They did not expect that all of them would be gone after just one trip to the Dahuang swamp. This was undoubtedly a huge blow to the Chongshu Pavilion. However, out of everyone's expectations, Yuqi Song's expression was very calm, as if he did not feel any pain from losing his disciples. Under everyone's gazes, Wei Qi Song walked straight in. After a simple greeting, he sat down in his seat. Seeing him so calm and composed, everyone did not know how to react for a moment. Could it be that he still doesn't know what happened? Song Wan was in a bad mood and couldn't help but speak up in a strange tone. Pavilion Master Wei Qi, I heard that the 3 disciples of your pavilion who went to the Dahuang swamp did not return. You have to restrain your grief. The moment he finished speaking, the entire atmosphere seemed to have frozen. Yuqi Song looked up and glanced at Song Wan calmly and coldly. Why? Do you want to cry at the grave? Digression, here is a February who has insomnia and is about to faint from hunger. Writing words is really an individual effort. 6:00. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 777. This sentence nearly made Song Wan choke to death. His face turned pale, then green, and then red. His expression changed very excitedly. He suddenly stood up and said angrily, "What did you say?" He was originally very frustrated and depressed. How could he control himself after hearing this sentence? It was as if he was ignited by fire. He exploded. However, Yuqi Song's expression was indifferent. Everyone present should have heard what I said clearly. Why are you the only one who didn't hear it clearly? Is there something wrong with your ears? It seems like your ears are just like your mouth. They're just decorations. It's fine if you don't want them. Yuchi Song scolded Song Wan until he was black and blue all over with just a few words. Everyone was dumbfounded. Yuchi Song had always been a person of virtue and prestige. His speech and actions had always been very low-key. And ever since Chongshu Pavilion suffered consecutive blows more than a year ago, it was needless to say. The entire Chongshu Pavilion seemed to have become transparent. Precisely because of this, many people gradually stopped taking Chongshu Pavilion seriously. They originally thought that this time, the deaths of Chu Luiyue and the other two would be a huge blow to Yuchi Song and the others. Some even suspected that he wouldn't come to the palace at all. They didn't expect that not only did he come, but he was also so domineering. How many people in the entire Shilin city dared to speak to Song Wan like this? Many people exchanged glances and saw the shock in each other's eyes. Could it be that he suffered too much of a shock? Yuchi Song sat in his seat and allowed countless gazes to size him up. He remained as still as a mountain. Would he not know if his own disciple was dead or alive? Those 3 children just didn't come back with Shangguan Wan and the others, but he knew clearly that they were still fine. However, he didn't intend to publicize this news now. On the way here, he knew that someone would definitely use this to create trouble for their Chongshu Pavilion. If it was anything else, he would just turn a blind eye and be too lazy to fuss over it. However, Song Wan was talking about those 3 children and even cursed them to die. How could he tolerate it? Song Wan was dumbfounded. In his memory, Yuchi Song had never been so rude to anyone. He was so angry that he laughed and sneered. Pavilion Master Wei Qi, we're all part of the 4 great sects. I'm merely expressing my concern. Aren't your words a little too much? Yuchi Song glanced at him as if he was watching a joke. I heard that 7 outstanding disciples of the Purple Shao Sword sect died this time. I didn't expect that sect leader Song would still be in the mood to care about our Chongshu Pavilion. Song Wan's heart immediately choked up, and he couldn't speak. They had indeed lost 7 disciples. Among the remaining 3, other than his own son, Song Qingmian, who was in relatively good condition, the other 2 were severely injured. It was very likely that it would affect their future cultivation. It could be said that they were completely wiped out. One had to know that the people sent to the Great Desolate Swamp this time were all the most outstanding disciples of their Purple Shao Sword sect. As a result, they would have to spend another 2 to 3 years to repair the damage. At this moment, Jian Shai suddenly spoke. I heard that Chu Luiyue helped save many people in the Mystic Forest. Not only our Dragon Teeth Mountain disciples, but the other sects also more or less received her help, right? As he spoke, he looked at Song Wan and deliberately asked. Song Wan, it seems that your precious son was also saved by them? Song Wan immediately retorted. Impossible. There's no such thing at all. Jian Shai was shocked as he looked at the people beside him. Oh. I wonder if anyone here has heard of this matter. The entire hall fell into an eerie silence. Everyone had different expressions. Song Wan sneered. I know that Chu Luiyue has some capabilities, but with her abilities, it's probably difficult for her to even protect herself, let alone help others. And she even helped so much? Jian Shai, what you're saying is too outrageous. After a moment, someone suddenly spoke. Dragon Teeth Mountain Master is right. Our sect's disciples were indeed saved by Chu Luiyue and the others. Song Wan immediately looked over with a frown and realized that the person speaking was the Palace Master of Holy Flame Palace. He sneered and was about to mock him when someone spoke again. Our Heavenly Secrets Residence's disciples did mention this when they returned. Song Wan's expression froze. It was fine if Jian Shai said that alone, but everyone actually admitted it one after another? The other sects were all silent, obviously not intending to refute. This made the patriarchs of the various aristocratic families sitting across from him shocked. As they didn't participate in this matter much, they didn't know much. Previously, they only thought that there were heavy casualties in Dahuang Swamp and didn't expect there to be such a thing inside. Jian Shai touched his chin and broke the silence. Song Wan, it seems like your precious son didn't tell you on purpose. Then, he probably didn't say that Yang Qin, or in your sect chose to self-destruct because she was found to be problematic, right? I heard that she almost harmed many people back then. Song Wan suddenly looked up with a shocked expression. He really didn't know. After Song Qingnian and the two disciples returned, he rushed over to take a look at them immediately. The two seriously injured disciples were quickly sent for treatment. Song Qingnian didn't say much and only said that he was very tired, so he went to rest. Song Wan's heart ached and only cared about being thankful that his son was still alive. How could he care about anything else? He quickly reacted and said sternly, "Dragon Teeth Mountain Lord, you can't spout nonsense." Right at this time, a voice suddenly sounded from outside the hall. What he said previously was indeed true. Everyone looked back and saw that it was Jiang Yucheng. No one reported it, and they didn't know how long he had been listening outside. Jiang Yucheng walked into the hall, and everyone kept quiet. Song Wan became nervous. Jiang Yucheng was present and had a special identity. If he said that, he hurriedly restrained his expression. After Qingnian came back, he was in low spirits, so I let him rest. I didn't know much about it. Jiang Yucheng shook his head lightly. Actually, he didn't take this to heart at all. His attention was mostly on Yuqi Song. Before he came, he happened to see Yuqi Song enter first and then heard Song Wan's provocation. Thus, he decided to listen outside for a while. What made him feel strange was that Yuqi Song seemed to know that Chu Luiyue and the rest hadn't returned yet, but he didn't seem to be very sad. It was fine for Chang Wanzhou and the rest. Yuqi Song might know that they were just looking for someone in the mystic forest. But Chu Luiyue, she was dead. Yuqi Song shouldn't have such a reaction, Prince Consort. This anxious shout attracted everyone's attention. Everyone looked up in unison. They saw a figure quickly walking over from outside the hall. Jiang Yucheng frowned. It was Chani. Why didn't Shangguan come? He walked over, but before he could say anything, he heard Chani say, "Prince Consort, the third princess has something on at the last minute. Please go to Huayang Hall first. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network." Chapter 778. As soon as these words were spoken, everyone was shocked. Everyone present had been gathered by Shangguan Wan. Now that everyone was here, she didn't come. Instead, she wanted to call Jiang Yucheng over. What was going on? Something came up at the last minute. What could it be for her to abandon everyone here and invite Jiang Yucheng alone? Even if he was the prince consort and had an extraordinary status, this didn't seem appropriate, right? Everyone present was an important figure in the Tianling dynasty. Everyone looked at each other. Their expressions weren't very good. Jiang Yucheng was also very surprised. He frowned inwardly. No matter how impudent Shangguan Wan was, she wouldn't dare to act recklessly at this time. None of the people here could be easily offended. Even His Majesty had to be polite to these people, let alone third Princess Shangguan Wan. If she hadn't gone crazy, then something important had really happened. He glanced at Chani and found that although Chani had her eyes lowered, her face was very tense. There was some anxiety in her eyes. His heart sank, and he turned to look at everyone. Please wait for a moment. We'll be back soon. Although everyone was dissatisfied, they wouldn't show it on their faces. They all told him to go quickly. Jiang Yucheng knew that he had offended them this time. However, the situation was urgent, and there was nothing he could do. He turned and walked in the direction of Huayang Palace. Chani quickly followed. After the two of them left, the palace fell silent again. No one said anything, but they were more or less dissatisfied. Shangguan Wan hadn't officially ascended the throne yet, but she was already so bold. She made so many people wait for her. When the time was up, she still didn't appear. Instead, she called Jiang Yucheng away, leaving everyone here. Before this, whether it was His Majesty or the princess, they had never done such an inappropriate thing. The people from the aristocratic families were fine, but the people from the sects were especially unhappy. Their families had suffered heavy losses in the Dahuang swamp trip. They wanted to ask Shang Wanwan for an explanation. Who would have thought that she wouldn't even show her face now? A cold and solemn atmosphere spread in the palace. Jiang Yucheng and Chani traveled quickly. When they arrived at Huayang Palace, they discovered that the palace was already heavily guarded. He felt more and more uneasy as he walked toward the main hall. When she reached the door, Chani stopped. Prince Consort, the third princess, said that only you can enter. Jiang Yucheng nodded, a little upset. He pushed the door open and walked in. The moment he entered, Chani closed the door behind him. Jiang Yucheng's expression turned serious. What exactly happened that made Huayang Palace so vigilant? Wan. He called out, but no one answered. He looked around but didn't see Shang Wanwan. Instead, he saw a broken box of cream beside the bronze mirror. He paused for a moment before continuing to walk inside. If it wasn't here, then it should be in the hot spring inside. Just as he walked to the door, he was hesitating whether to go in and look for her when he heard a painful groan coming from inside. It was weak and oppressive, and it also carried a trace of deep fear. It was Shang Wanwan. Jiang Yucheng didn't stay any longer as he directly pushed the door open and walked in. The moment he walked in, a hot and humid steam surged toward him. This was a gigantic hot spring. Smoke surrounded it, and he couldn't see anyone clearly. However, Jiang Yucheng had been here before, so he knew where it was. Amidst the blurry steam, he could vaguely see a figure beside the hot spring. Wan, what's wrong? He walked toward that person. But the moment he got close, he smelled a strong bloody smell. More importantly, there was a hint of rotting smell in this bloody stench. Jiang Yucheng couldn't be more familiar with this smell. Isn't this the strange smell in the mystic forest? This smell was nauseating. Jiang Yucheng suppressed his disgust and walked forward. Shang Wanwan was wearing 2 layers of unlined clothing as she lay at the edge of the hot spring. Her hands were tightly clawing the ground. Hearing Jiang Yucheng's voice, she moved with much difficulty and spoke. Yucheng. Her voice was hoarse, and her breathing was weak. Jiang Yucheng went forward and carefully held her shoulders. Wan, why are you lying here? Everyone is waiting for you. His voice stopped abruptly. This was because there was actually a pool of blood in the hot spring nearby. Wretch! Shang Wanwan's body trembled, and she vomited blood again. But this wasn't what shocked Jiang Yucheng the most. He swept his gaze across and shockingly discovered that Shang Wanwan's exposed arm had actually become much thinner. I just didn't see her for half a day, but her arm has actually become so skinny. There's clearly a problem. He was very shocked and was about to ask when he saw a faint dark green light flowing under her skin. It was very strange. That light, isn't that light exactly the same as the one I saw in the mystic forest? Wan, what's going on with your body? Asked Jiang Yucheng anxiously. It's no wonder Shang Wanwan hurriedly called me over. This kind of situation was really too strange. Shang Wanwan grabbed his hand and started crying in despair. I don't know either. At first, she just wanted to wash up, but not long later, she realized that something was wrong with her body. That dark green light was flowing all over her body, and her body started to become thinner at a visible speed. It was as if her muscles, bones, and flesh were all being swallowed by this thing. Shang Wanwan had never seen such a situation before, and she was scared to death at that time. Seeing that things were going out of control, she could only get Chan Yi to call Jiang Yucheng over. Yucheng, you have to save me. You must save me. Shang Wanwan hugged his arm and cried in pain and panic as she begged non-stop. Jiang Yucheng's pupils constricted. The current Shang Wanwan's appearance was completely ruined, and her body was also very skinny. He felt very uncomfortable hugging her, and she looked neither human nor ghost. If it weren't for his strong mental fortitude, he really couldn't help but fling her away. The spot where Shangguan hugged him tightly seemed to have lice, and it was very itchy and uncomfortable. He closed his eyes and took a deep breath in before asking, "Did you make use of that mother tree in the mystic forest?" Mystic forest. It was silent in the dark space. Chu Liuyue's force surrounded him, and he was clearly stronger than before. After digesting the swallowing force again, Chu Liyue slowly opened his eyes. His gaze became even brighter and brighter, and his body became much lighter. His entire body seemed to be filled with abundant energy. Taizu couldn't help but praise him. "Liu, hang in there for a while longer, and you should be able to successfully break through to peak stage 5. Chu Liyue smiled brightly, then looked opposite him and squinted his eyes. A dark green light appeared out of nowhere and surged toward the two Tian baby. Chu Liyue teased him. "Where did you get such modeled energy from? You want this too?" Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 779. That ball of green light stopped in front of the two Tian baby. For a moment, it was very awkward. The corners of Chu Liuyue's lips curled up slightly, and a sly light flashed in his eyes. This was the two Tian baby's divine realm, and everything was under its control. From previous experience, it was obvious that it could absorb energy from the outside. The mystic forest's energy had been exhausted, and there was still the Red Moon Desert and Mirror Lake next to it. The energy contained in these two places was much more than that in the mystic forest. If it persisted and continued to absorb energy from the outside world at a speed faster than Chu Liuyue's absorption and digestion speed, then it would be very disadvantageous for Chu Liyue. Moreover, this ball of energy looked really mottled and messy. Chu Liyue didn't like it and would rather not have it. It would be a waste for it to be paired with the two Tian baby. Taizu coughed. There were probably not many people who dared to talk to the two Tian baby like that. Originally, that energy was taken by the two Tian baby, and there was nothing wrong with using it. However, after Chu Liyue said that, it seemed to have become cheap. Even he felt that it was a little strange. Sure enough, after a short silence, the ball of light dissipated with a bang. Chu Liyue nodded in satisfaction. "That's more like it." Taizu's mouth twitched. Sensing the dangerous aura emitted by the two Tian baby, Taizu was very worried. This lass is really relying on that water curtain to do whatever she wants. Chu Liyue didn't take this to heart and turned to look at the hourglass. It seemed that a few months had passed. For the people outside, it was actually only a few days. "I wonder how Hongyu and Xiaozhou are doing. I've been trapped here, so I have no way to contact them." Thinking about it, they must be very worried. If only someone could help me pass a message. Thinking of this, Chu Liyue suddenly remembered the voices she heard before. One of them even called out her name clearly. If those people could help. Chu Liyue looked up. It was pitch black. He couldn't see or hear anything. Those voices hadn't appeared for a long time. She retracted her gaze regretfully as a trace of doubt flashed through her mind. She didn't remember knowing such people, but they seemed to be very familiar with her. She pursed her lips slightly. She vaguely felt that she had forgotten something. But she didn't even know what stage of memory she had forgotten. This was because there was no missing time in her mind. As far as she was concerned, her memory was complete. This caused a ripple in her heart. Also, who was that black-clothed man on the cliff? Red Moon Desert. The scorching sun hung high in the sky, almost blinding people. The sand was boiling hot, as if it had been roasted by charcoal. Heat waves surged, and the nearby void was slightly distorted due to the heat. There was no wind in the surroundings at all. It wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that such a place could roast people into jerky. In the vast and boundless desert, there was not a single person. However, on the undulating sand dunes, there was a muscular figure that was quickly passing by. It was Xue Xue. If someone looked down from above, they would be able to see that the sand dunes in the Red Moon Desert were arranged according to a certain pattern. And as time passed, these sand dunes were also silently changing. It was as if an invisible hand was controlling everything, changing the position of these sand dunes at will. And Shue Shue was running back and forth at the top of these sand dunes. According to that person's instructions, it had to run continuously here, and it could only land at the top of the sand dunes every time, leaving at most 2 paw prints. This matter seemed simple, but in reality, it consumed a lot of energy and strength. This was because the vast Red Moon Desert was under the control of the other party. In the past few days, Shue Shue had run around the entire Red Moon Desert several times. Its originally snow-white fur was also stained with a layer of yellow sand, turning into a dirty yellowish-white color. After running for a long time, Shue Shue's strength was almost exhausted. It raised its head to take a look. There were no clouds in the sky, and the sun was shining brightly. And there were sand dunes that kept appearing in front of it. Even a divine beast couldn't withstand such torment. "You're too slow." A baby-like voice suddenly sounded in its ears. Shue Shue was shocked and forced to speed up again. It had no choice. Although those people could only come out during the night of the Red Moon Desert, it was still easy for them to monitor it. Shue Shue's heart was bitter. For the 10,000th time, it regretted signing a contract with Rongxiu. For the 10,000th time, it fantasized about running away from home. Once it was done with the punishment here, it would definitely not go back. It wanted to follow Chu Luiyue. Sob, 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 I missed that warm embrace. Shue Shue accepted its fate and ran forward. Biyao, aren't you too cruel? Look at how tired little Shue Shue is. His fine fur was about to turn into withered grass. TSK TSK. Lan Zhan said with some disdain. If you want to say who's wrong, it's Rongxiu. Why are you venting your anger on little Shue Shue? Dugu Mabao sneered coldly. Can't you guess why Rongxiu sent it here himself? If we don't teach it a lesson, Rongxiu will think that we're easy to bully. Lan Zhan thought for a moment. Anyway, don't let Rongxiu off just because you tortured little Shue Shue. When the time comes, you can deal with it however you want. As long as little Shue Shue didn't make up for it. Diwu Zhangzi said slowly, Hee, you just don't like Rongxiu, right? When he comes, can't you do it yourself? Lan Zhan sighed. Do you think I'm stupid? If I touch Rongxiu, will the girl let me go if she knows? I'm different from Biyao. No one will think you're mute if you don't speak. It doesn't matter if I'm mute or not. The main thing is to look good. Dugu Mabao forcibly suppressed its anger. Such a big thing happened to the girl. Rongxiu knew about it and didn't report it. It's his fault. Moreover, that divine beast by his side was almost spoiled by him. Do you really think he sent it here just to ask for forgiveness? This kid wants me to help him tame the beast. Rongxiu, who had just walked out of the hall, sneezed again. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from love. Chapter 780. Tianling Palace. Huayang Palace. Sheng Wanwan leaned into Jiang Yuqing's arms and tightly gripped his arm as if she was grabbing onto her last life-saving straw. Yuqing, help me. Help me. Only you can help me, she kept spitting out blood, and her voice was hoarse and hopeless. She looked like a wretched ghost. Jiang Yuqing had never seen Sheng Wanwan like this. He suppressed the disgust in his heart and tried to push her away a little. But Sheng Wanwan hugged him very tightly, and he couldn't ignore her. Jiang Yuqing was worried that if he overdid it, it would cause a huge shock to her, so he could only hold it in. He looked at the light flowing under Sheng Wanwan's skin and knitted his brows tightly. What exactly did you provoke? He originally thought that after Sheng Wanwan hid underground, she personally took action against those people. But he didn't expect her to use those tree roots. Thinking of Yang Qin, who chose to self-destruct previously and had a rotten and bloody aura on her, his face turned cold. You attacked Yang Qin, previously, didn't you? Sheng Wanwan felt very guilty and shifted her gaze. I only borrowed a little of her strength. But I also don't know what those tree roots are. To Jiang Yuqing, Shang Wanwan was really too stupid to treat Yang Qin, in Xiling City. So many eyes are watching her openly and secretly. Once someone finds out, she can't even keep her status as the third princess, let alone the throne. But now that Yang Qin is already dead, there's no point in pursuing this. Once outsiders see Shang Wanwan's current appearance, they will definitely think of Yang Qin back then. So no matter what, I have to think of a way to solve Shang Wanwan's problem. Jiang Yuqing held his breath and looked at Shang Wanwan solemnly. Sit up first and give me your hand. When Shang Wanwan heard this, her eyes suddenly lit up. She quickly struggled to sit up in his arms and reached out her hand. Jiang Yuqing glanced at it and saw a hand as thin as a skeleton. It was stained with messy bloodstains, which made him nauseous. Jiang Yuqing forced himself to restrain himself. He stretched out his hand and slowly placed it against Shang Wanwan's as origin power surged around him. Gradually, there seemed to be a layer of black mist spreading out from his eyes, gradually dyeing them black. Even the sclera of his eyes had turned black. At first glance, they looked like two dark holes. It was a little horrifying. A stream of origin power slowly entered Shang Wanwan's body. More than half of her Yuan meridian had been repaired, so the transition of origin power could be considered smooth. At this moment, the dark green light had already flowed to her shoulder. Jiang Yuqing controlled his own power and approached bit by bit. A trace of pain appeared on Shang Wanwan's face. Wherever Jiang Yuqing's power passed, it was as if it was being forcefully cut by a knife. If there were outsiders present at this moment, they would be shocked to discover that the aura of the origin power that Jiang Yuqing had sent out was clearly stronger than his current realm. Logically speaking, this was definitely not a power that he could use by himself. However, Shang Wanwan seemed to have already known this. She was not the least bit surprised by this. Instead, she forcefully endured the pain. When that power slowly approached Shang Wanwan's shoulder and was about to clash with the dark green light, the latter suddenly exploded. Bang! Following the explosion, Shang Wanwan's body shook, and flesh and blood splattered from her shoulder. Ah! She was momentarily caught off guard and was shocked by this sudden change. Fear and panic instantly surged into her heart. After a short moment of being stunned, the intense pain spread. Shang Wanwan was in so much pain that her face turned pale, and she almost fainted. Jiang Yuqing, who was nearby, was also shocked. This explosion happened too suddenly, so much so that he did not even have time to react or dodge before he was directly knocked down by the tyrannical and violent airflow. His chest shook, and a strong smell of blood surged up between his lips and teeth. However, he did not have time to care about his injuries and immediately looked up. Shang Wanwan fell to the ground. Her left shoulder had completely festered and turned into a bloody mess. If it had been a little more to the side, her entire arm would probably have been broken. As for that dark green light, it had already dissipated without a trace. Jiang Yuqing was still in shock, and his heart was beating crazily. Just now. What exactly happened? Shang Wanwan's painful moans pulled Jiang Yuqing back from his thoughts. He suppressed the surging blood in his chest and walked towards Shang Wanwan. Shang Wanwan was lying on the ground, covered in blood. However, some of the energy that had been devoured earlier seemed to have returned. Her body, which was originally so thin that only bones were left, was gradually recovering. Although she still looked a lot thinner than before, it was still much better than her skeleton-like appearance. Shang Wanwan's mind was blank. Looking at Jiang Yuqing, who appeared in front of her, she opened her mouth, but could not speak. Jiang Yuqing frowned. With Shang Wanwan like this, it was impossible for her to go out and meet anyone. There were still so many people waiting in Minghua Palace, and they could not afford to waste time. He took out a jade bottle and poured out 2 pills. One was for himself, and the other was for Shang Wanwan. This is to regulate your blood and qi and nourish your body. Take it first. Also, according to your current condition, you can't go to Minghua Palace anymore. Later, let Chani come in to take care of you. Also, send Zhua Mingxi into the palace to check on your injuries. You must not leave any problems. Shang Wanwan opened her mouth and looked at him with a sorrowful gaze. I will handle Minghua Palace. Tell the public that you were injured while getting medicine for His Majesty and need to recuperate. In a short period of time, Jiang Yuqing had already made his decision. Shang Wanwan wanted to say something, but hesitated. In the end, she nodded with difficulty to express her agreement. She also understood that this was the only way in the current situation. Then, Jiang Yuqing turned and left. Shang Wanwan closed her eyes in despair and resentment. She could clearly feel that more than half of the strength that she had accumulated with great difficulty had been used up after this torture. She just wanted to repair her Yuan meridian and become an expert again. Why was it so difficult? That light, what was going on? After Jiang Yuqing handed Shang Wanwan to Chani, he returned to Minghua Palace. Everyone thought that Shang Wanwan would come with Jiang Yuqing this time, but in the end, they only saw Jiang Yuqing alone. They could not help but look at each other with doubtful expressions. Jiang Yuqing walked in front of everyone with a trace of worry and concern. I'm afraid the third princess won't be able to come today. She was injured while getting medicine for His Majesty. Now, she has to rest in bed for a few days. Please forgive her. After a short period of silence, Jian Shai asked, what kind of medicine is it that the third princess risked her life to get it? Jiang Yuqing paused. Dancing Lotus. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 781. Everyone was shocked. Jian Shai was stunned for a moment before continuing to ask. Dancing Lotus? Is it the legendary Dancing Lotus that can revive a dead person? Jiang Yuqing nodded. Yes. If not for this, the third princess wouldn't be willing to take the risk to retrieve it. Song Wan said excitedly. The third princess is really filial to His Majesty. After retrieving this Dancing Lotus, His Majesty's health will definitely improve. Jiang Yuqing frowned imperceptibly, and his tone was slightly cold. Sect Master Song is right, but it's a pity that we haven't successfully retrieved the Dancing Lotus. Song Wan's face instantly flushed red. Many people around couldn't help but laugh secretly. He flattered the wrong horse. He's really something. Song Wan felt that he had lost face and muttered. I see. I think that the Dancing Lotus is a rare treasure in the world. It must be very difficult to retrieve it successfully. I thought too simply. Jiang Yuqing couldn't be bothered to argue with him so much. He nodded and said, You're right. What you said is correct. The Dancing Lotus is indeed extremely difficult to approach. Elder Qiushi died because of that Dancing Lotus. The moment he said that, the huge Minghua Palace instantly quietened down. Everyone's expression changed simultaneously. They didn't expect the matter to be so troublesome. Elder Qiushi was an elder of the royal family and was naturally very powerful. Even he couldn't do it and died just like that. It could be seen how dangerous that Dancing Lotus was. That Dancing Lotus grows in the mirror lake of the Dahuang Swamp. Originally, we wanted to pluck it and bring it back for His Majesty to use. However, that mirror lake is a little strange, and even Elder Qiushi wasn't spared. Thus, we were worried about the safety of the soldiers and disciples of the various families and sects, so we made a prompt decision and chose to return. Jiang Yuqing's words not only explained the reason for Shang Wanwan's injury but also explained the reason for everyone's sudden return. This time, they returned in a hurry and would definitely cause a huge commotion in the entire Xiling city. There would be countless guesses and rumors in the open and in the dark. Jiang Yuqing didn't want to be criticized because of this matter. I see, no wonder Her Highness the Third Princess brought her men back so quickly. She did it out of consideration for everyone's safety. What's so strange about Mirror Lake? Why is it so dangerous? After a short period of silence, everyone started to discuss. Obviously, the various guesses and complaints about Shangguan Wan and the others from before had quietly dissipated at this time. In such a situation, who could reprimand them? Jiang Yuqing looked around and waited for everyone to finish talking before he said, "What's the matter?" "Therefore, we came back this time. On one hand, we don't want to cause unnecessary casualties. On the other hand, we want to find a few experts to go to the Great Desolate Swamp again and join forces to retrieve the Dancing Lotus." The hall fell silent. "What do you all think?" After Jiang Yuqing asked, no one spoke for a while. Everyone secretly exchanged glances with each other as they pondered. Without a doubt, a heavenly treasure like the Dancing Lotus was fatally attractive to anyone. But at the same time, they had to consider their safety. Even Elder Qiushi had died there. How many people could guarantee that they would be able to return safe and sound? Most importantly, even if they succeeded in retrieving the Dancing Lotus, they would still have to give it to His Majesty in the end. What could they get? Everyone present was an important figure of high status, and each of them was very shrewd. They either represented the entire clan or the entire sect. If something happened to them, who knew how many people would be implicated? Therefore, even if they were indeed loyal to His Majesty, when it came to their own lives, they still had to think carefully. No one spoke. The air seemed to have frozen. Jiang Yuqing frowned imperceptibly. He had expected that a large portion of these people might not be willing to take this risk, but he didn't expect that everyone would be like this. He hesitated for a moment and said, "I know that this trip is dangerous and that everyone has concerns, but that Dancing Lotus is simply too important to His Majesty. In addition to the corresponding reward, apart from the Dancing Lotus, the other herbs found will also belong to each of you." Many people's eyes lit up. If that was the case, they could still consider it. The reason why Elder Qiushi died was that he was careless at that time. Secondly, he went alone with no one to support him. You are all the top powerhouses of the Tianling dynasty. If you all join forces, it shouldn't be a problem to take the Dancing Lotus, right? There was no doubt that Jiang Yuqing's words made many people's minds waver. Since the Dancing Lotus had appeared in Mirror Lake, there might be other treasures. As long as they were fully prepared, even if they really couldn't get it, they would still have the ability to escape. They wouldn't follow in Elder Qiushi's footsteps. At this moment, a voice sounded. "I'm willing to go." Hearing this, everyone looked over and found that the person who spoke was actually Yuqi Song. Everyone, including Jiang Yuqing, was shocked. Everyone present was likely to go, but they felt that Yuqi Song was the least likely to go. There were only a few people left in the Chongshu Pavilion now, and they were all relying on him, the pavilion master. If something happened to him, wouldn't the Chongshu Pavilion be completely finished? Besides, Chu Luiyue and the others had died in the Dahuang swamp, and he actually wanted to go to that sad place. What was he thinking? However, facing everyone's doubtful eyes, Yuqi Song's expression was calm and indifferent, and he didn't care. He had made up his mind. Jian Shai touched his chin. "As a celestial physician, I naturally have to go and see what the Dancing Lotus looks like. I'll go too." At this time, Chu Luiyue naturally didn't know that in Xiling City thousands of miles away, a group of people was planning to come to the Dahuang swamp again. She was trapped in this small place, and the only thing she could do was cultivate. Taizu glanced at the hourglass beside him. Counting the time, less than 10 days had passed outside. However, more than half a year had passed here. Chu Luiyue cultivated day and night here as if she had entered a meditative state. At first, Taizu was worried that Chu Luiyue wouldn't be used to staying here for a long time. However, he didn't expect her to be so determined. She said that she wanted to cultivate, but she only did this one thing wholeheartedly. If it were someone else, they might have felt bored and depressed long ago. However, Chu Luiyue didn't. Even Taizu was amazed by her patience. He couldn't help but be curious. I wonder how powerful Chu Luiyue will be when she comes out of here. Time passed slowly. Qin Yi and the others, who were waiting in the mystic forest, had already endured for nearly half a month. At the start, they would still guess when Chu Luiyue would come out, but they basically wouldn't say anything now. The only thing they could do was to cultivate while waiting silently. However, this tranquility was quickly broken. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Web. Chapter 782. Someone entered the mystic forest again. Qin Yi didn't know about the situation at Mirror Lake and Red Moon Desert. However, he stayed in the mystic forest for a long time and left traces in many places. If anything were to happen, he would be able to sense it. Someone's here. In the quiet atmosphere, Qin Yi's words were very prominent. The few of them looked over. Lei Laosi frowned. Who else would come at this time? Even if someone barged into Dahuang Swamp, they probably wouldn't come in after seeing the mystic forest's current state, right? Qin Yi's expression became serious. The other party isn't weak. Seeing his reaction, the few of them became serious. Big brother, how many of them are here? Should be 5. Qin Yi narrowed his long and narrow eyes. What he didn't say was that the other party's aura was very familiar. Lei Laosi scratched his head. Why don't I go and test them first? No need. They won't come here. Qin Yi paused and stopped Lei Laosi's actions. At the same time, the few figures that entered the forest not long ago stopped. It was Jiang Yucheng and the others, who came again. Other than him, there were 4 other people. They were Yuqi Song, Jian Shai, Song Wan, and Grand Tutor, Xiahou Rong. There was no need to explain why the first few people were here. Xiahou Rong was the Grand Tutor and had always been doted on by His Majesty. In addition, he wasn't weak himself, so logically speaking, he was one of the people who should come. This time, Mu Qinghe didn't bring the black cavalry along. There were too many casualties previously, so he still had many things to settle. Also, Dahuang Swamp was extremely dangerous, and normal people would only die if they came here. Not only would they not be of help, but they might even become a burden. The few of them stood still and looked at the scene in front of them with complicated expressions. Jiang Yucheng said, "You've all seen it. As you can see, the mystic forest has been reduced to such a state. It was very dangerous back then. Originally, he wanted to take them directly to Mirror Lake, but Yuqi Song said that she wanted to have a look at the mystic forest, so they came. Anyone could guess that Yuqi Song still wanted to look for his disciples. Song Wan originally didn't want to agree, but the others didn't say anything, so he could only follow along. Jian Shai looked around. Elder Song, I heard that Hong Yu and the rest are still in the mystic forest. Why don't we look for them? Then go to Mirror Lake? It won't take much time anyway. Anyway, it was better to find as many as possible. It was always good to have one more survivor. Since he had already said so much, who could say no? Song Wan was very unhappy and looked at Jiang Yucheng. They had come here to look for the dancing lotus, but why had they come to the mystic forest to look for someone? She originally thought that Jiang Yucheng would speak up to stop her, but to her surprise, even Jiang Yucheng agreed to it. Helpless, Song Wan could only swallow his words. Jiang Yucheng slowly clenched his fists in his sleeves, and a trace of nervousness arose in his heart. His rationality told him that it was impossible for Chu Luiyue to still be alive, but deep in his heart, there seemed to be an indescribable desire. If she's really still alive, a bright and dazzling smile appeared in his mind. Shangguan had already become like that, and he didn't know if she could recover. He didn't know when it started, but when facing Shangguan, the remaining patience in his heart had already been exhausted. He suddenly thought of something and looked at Yuqi Song, seemingly unintentionally asking, Elder Song, did anyone inform Chu Luiyue's fiancé about what happened here? Digression 6. 6 p.m. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 783. Everyone was shocked. Jian Shai froze for a moment before he continued to ask, Whirling Lotus? Is it the legendary whirling lotus that can bring the dead back to life? Jiang Yuqing nodded his head. Yes. If it weren't for this, the third princess wouldn't have taken the risk to retrieve it. Song Wan said excitedly, the third princess is truly filial to His Majesty. If we retrieve the whirling lotus, His Majesty's health will definitely improve. Jiang Yuqing's brows furrowed imperceptibly. His tone was slightly cold. Leader Song is right. However, it's a pity that the whirling lotus hasn't been retrieved yet. Song Wan's face suddenly turned the color of a pig's liver. Many people around them couldn't help but laugh secretly. His bootlicking had failed miserably, and he was truly to blame. Song Wan felt that he had lost face. He mumbled. I see. The whirling lotus is a rare treasure in the world. It must be very difficult to retrieve it. I was too naive, Jiang Yuqing was too lazy to argue with him. He nodded his head and said, you're right. The whirling lotus is indeed extremely difficult to get close to. Elder Qiu Shi died to retrieve the whirling lotus. As soon as he said this, the huge clear flower palace suddenly quieted down. Everyone's expression changed. They didn't expect the situation to be so troublesome. Elder Qiu Shi was an elder of the royal family. His strength was undeniable. Even he didn't manage to do it and died. This showed how dangerous the whirling lotus was. The whirling lotus grows in the mirror lake of the Great Desolation Swamp. Originally, we wanted to pluck it and bring it back for His Majesty to use. However, that mirror lake was a little strange. Even Elder Qiu Shi couldn't escape. Therefore, we were worried about the safety of the soldiers and the disciples of the various sects, so we made a prompt decision and chose to come back. Jiang Yuqing's words not only explained the reason for Sheng Wanwan's injury, but also the reason why everyone suddenly came back. This time, they came back in a hurry. It was bound to cause a great commotion in the entire West Hill city. Who knew how many guesses and rumors would appear in the open and in the dark? Jiang Yuqing didn't want to be criticized because of this. I see, no wonder Her Highness the Third Princess brought people back so quickly. She was thinking about everyone's safety. What's so strange about that mirror lake? Why is it so dangerous? After a short period of silence, everyone began to discuss among themselves. Obviously, all the guesses and complaints about Sheng Wanwan and the others had quietly disappeared. Under such circumstances, who could reprimand them? Jiang Yuqing looked around, and when everyone was almost done speaking, he said, therefore, we came back this time not to cause unnecessary casualties. On the other hand, we wanted to find a few experts to go to the Great Desolate Swamp again and work together to retrieve the whirling lotus. The main hall fell silent. What do you think? After Jiang Yuqing asked, no one spoke for a while. Everyone secretly exchanged glances with each other, each of them thinking. There was no doubt that a treasure like the whirling lotus was fatally attractive to everyone. But at the same time, they had to consider their safety. Even Elder Qiu Shi died there, so how many people could guarantee that they would be able to return safely and without worry? Most importantly, even if they took the risk and successfully retrieved the whirling lotus, they would still have to offer it to His Majesty. What could they gain? Everyone present was a big shot of high status, and every one of them was very astute. They either represented the entire clan or the entire sect. If something happened to them, it was unknown how many people would be implicated. Therefore, even if they were loyal and devoted to His Majesty, they still had to consider things that involved their own lives. No one spoke. The air seemed to have frozen. Jiang Yuqing's brows furrowed imperceptibly. He had expected that a large portion of these people would not be willing to take the risk, but he did not expect everyone to be like this. He hesitated for a moment and said, I know that this trip is dangerous, and everyone has their concerns, but the whirling lotus is simply too important to His Majesty. Apart from the corresponding reward, apart from the whirling lotus, all the other herbs found will belong to everyone. Many people's eyes lit up. If that was the case, they could still consider it. Elder Qiu Shi died because he was careless at the time, and because he went alone without anyone to support him. Everyone here is the most powerful cultivator in Tianling dynasty. If you all work together, surely it won't be a problem to take down the whirling lotus? Jiang Yucheng's words undoubtedly caused many people's hearts to waver. Since the whirling lotus could appear in Mirror Lake, there might be other treasures as well. As long as they made sufficient preparations, even if they really couldn't get it, they still had the ability to escape, and wouldn't follow in Elder Qiuxi's footsteps. Right at this moment, a voice rang out. This old man is willing to go. Hearing that, everyone looked over, and discovered that the person who spoke was actually Yuqi Song. Everyone, including Jiang Yucheng, was taken aback. Everyone present could possibly go, except for Yuqi Song. They felt that he was the least likely to go. There were only so few people left in Clear Void Pavilion now, and they were all relying on him, the pavilion master, to support them. Once something happened to him, wouldn't this Clear Void Pavilion be completely finished? Besides, Chu Luyue and the others had all died in the Great Desolate Swamp, and he actually wanted to go to that sad place. What on earth was he thinking? However, in the face of everyone's doubtful gazes, Yuqi Song's expression was calm and indifferent. He had made up his mind. Jian Shai rubbed his chin. As the heavenly doctor, I naturally have to go and see what that whirling lotus looks like. I'll go too. At this moment, Chu Luyue naturally did not know that in West Hill City, thousands of miles away, there was a group of people plotting to rush to the Great Desolate Swamp again. She was trapped in this small place, and the only thing she could do was cultivate. The founding father glanced at the hourglass beside him. Calculating the time, less than 10 days had passed in the outside world. However, more than half a year had passed in this place. Here, Chu Luyue cultivated day and night. Her entire person seemed to have entered a meditative state. At first, the founding father was worried that Chu Luyue would not be used to staying here for a long time. However, he did not expect her to be so determined. When she said that she wanted to cultivate, she wholeheartedly focused on this one thing. If it was someone else, they would have already felt bored and depressed. However, Chu Luyue did not. Even the great ancestor was amazed by his patience. He could not help but be curious. He did not know how strong Chu Luyue would be when she left this place. Time passed slowly. Qin Yi and the others who were waiting in the illusory fog forest had already endured for nearly half a month. At first, they would guess when Chu Luyue would come out. However, they basically did not say anything now. The only thing they could do was to cultivate while waiting in silence. However, this tranquility was soon broken. Mobile users, please browse and read. For a better reading experience, please visit the website. Chapter 784. Yuqi Song glanced at Jiang Yucheng strangely and frowned slightly. Why did he suddenly mention Lu Yu's fiancé at this time? Not to mention that Chu Liuyue's situation had not been thoroughly investigated. Even if something really happened, her fiancé was not in West Hill now. How could he inform him? Not yet. Yuqi Song's expression was indifferent. Why did you suddenly mention him? Jiang Yucheng sized up the other party's expression and knew that the other party had doubts in his heart. Speaking of which, it's quite a coincidence. I've met that person once before. I heard that he is a prince of country Yaochen. When he was in Yaochen, the two of them were engaged. However, he doesn't seem to be in good health. I was just thinking that if he suddenly found out about what happened here, I'm afraid he wouldn't be able to bear it. I didn't expect eldest young Master Jiang to know so much about these things. You know almost better than me, his master. Yuqi Song seemed to say unintentionally. Jiang Yucheng's expression stiffened. It was indeed a little strange for him to know about these things with his status. Oh, Elder Song, don't misunderstand. I don't mean anything else. You also know that Chu Luyue is very famous in West Hill City. There must be many people who are very curious about everything about her. Even I am no exception. Jiang Yucheng straightforwardly admitted to this point. Because there was nothing to criticize. A prodigy who was outstanding in the entire West Hill would definitely attract a lot of attention. It would be strange if Jiang Yuqing did not know anything about her. As for her fiancé, I met him by coincidence and asked about him. Elder Song, you won't mind, right? Yuqi Song's expression was calm. Eldest young master Jiang has his reasons for doing things. These words made Jiang Yuqing a little flustered, as if they were mocking him. But he still endured it. Let's not talk about this anymore. Let's find them first. Jiang Yuqing did not get any useful information from Yuqi Song, so he simply did not say anything more. Yuqi Song was an old fox and not easy to deal with. As for Chu Liuyue's so-called fiancé, he was just a sickly person, so why should he care about him? The next time they met, he would deal with it directly. This small interlude came to an end. They continued to walk into the forest. However, after about an hour, they still did not see anyone. Jian Shai frowned and looked at a withered tree in front of him. Wait, have we been here before? Yuqi Song said, you noticed it too? Jian Shai nodded and looked around. It seems like we've been running around in circles for the past hour. No wonder he couldn't find anything. Jiang Yuqing was stunned. Been here before? Are you sure? Jian Shai snorted and lifted his chin. I took a closer look at the patterns on the bark of that tree earlier. I'm sure that it has circled back. Xiahou Rong was shocked. Does this mean that we're going around in circles? The few of them fell silent. The situation couldn't be more clear. It was fine if one person saw wrongly, but since Jian Shai and Yuqi Song said so, there must be a problem. Even Song Wan was frowning. Jiang Yuqing also looked around in confusion. Strange, this didn't happen when we came here before. They originally thought that the miasma and tree roots were the most dangerous things in the mystic forest, but they didn't expect to encounter such trouble. Someone seems to have set up a Xian formation here, but at the same time, they also used some Chimen Duanjia to block the people who came in. Jian Shai murmured and looked at Yuqi Song. Elder Song, among us, you're the only one who has some research on this. Can you see anything? Yuqi Song specialized in celestial physician, but he also had some understanding of these strange things. The few of them looked at him. Yuqi Song was silent for a moment and shook his head. The other party is proficient in this and has set up a meticulous plan. I can't solve it either. Hearing his words, the others were all stunned. Jian Shai couldn't hide his disappointment. Then, won't we be trapped here forever? What about the children? Yuqi Song turned around and pointed in a direction. That's the direction we came from. As long as we walk in that direction, we can leave this place. However, it'll be extremely difficult to enter. Jiang Yuqing's eyes suddenly moved. Could this be Qin Yi and the rest's plan? Who's Qin Yi? Xiahou Rong asked. The various aristocratic families didn't send anyone over, so they didn't know much about what happened here. Jiang Yuqing gave a simple explanation. Yuqi Song looked down thoughtfully and didn't say anything. Jian Shai asked curiously. If it's really them, why do they have to do this? Previously, Zhu Hong and the rest said that Qin Yi and the rest treated the children quite well. You can't judge a book by its cover. Song Wan interrupted him and mocked him. If they're really decent people, why would they stay in Dahuang Swamp for such a long time for no reason? Besides, Chu Luyue snatched the 9-colored heavenly pheasant that they've been protecting. They might harbor a grudge and do something. Jian Shai glanced at him in frustration. This Song Wan really can't say anything decent. He's just afraid that others are better than him. My disciples have suffered heavy casualties, so I can't let everyone else be the same. Yuqi Song suddenly said, let's go. Let's leave first and head to Mirror Lake since the other party doesn't want us to enter. Jiang Yuqing was a little hesitant and wanted to say something. However, since even Yuqi Song didn't intend to continue walking in, he naturally didn't have a say. The group quickly returned the way they came from. After walking for a long distance, Yuqi Song finally heaved a sigh of relief in his heart. He turned around with a deep gaze. So that person is actually back. Jiang Yuqing probably didn't expect this even in his dreams, right? Gotcha. A fingernail-sized fragment fell from the crystal again. At this point, most of the crystal that was originally the size of 2 palms had been swallowed, and only the centermost piece was left. The 2 baby was wrapped in it, and only a thin layer of shell was left on the outside. It was as though it would shatter with a knock. Of course, this energy was too massive. After Chu Luiyue swallowed it, she didn't completely convert it into her own energy. Most of it was still stored in the water droplet. Despite so, Chu Luiyue's abilities still increased by a lot. After staying in this space for nearly a year, she finally touched the barrier of peak stage 5. Chu Luiyue melted and swallowed that fragment. She had done this countless times and could be said to be as smooth as flowing water. Then, she looked at the opposite side. As long as she peeled off one more piece, the 2 baby would be exposed. The heaven-wrecking holy seed seemed to have realized this as well and began to become restless. The surrounding space also started to vibrate faintly. Chu Luiyue had a thought. Crack. A crack appeared. A vast and majestic ancient aura erupted from it. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 785. Song Wan flew on his sword and flew over Mirror Lake. Looking down, it was a large piece of floating ice reflecting a cold luster. Looking from here, he could see that the ice layer was actually spreading outwards with the dancing lotus as the center. The closer it was to the dancing lotus, the thicker and smoother the ice layer was. Correspondingly, the further it was, the more fragmented the ice layer was. When it reached the dam where the 2 worlds met, there were only some small pieces of floating ice left. The so-called bridge made of ice didn't really connect the 2 sides. Because the distance in the middle was closer, the ice layer spread outwards and reached here first. At a glance, it did look like an ice bridge. Actually, there was still a short distance near the dam where the floating ice didn't condense. The water was sparkling, calm, and clear. Song Wan walked forward carefully. Anyway, regardless of whether the ice bridge was completely connected, he wouldn't walk on it. In fact, he wouldn't even get close to her. He heard what Jiang Yuqing said just now clearly. Who knew how these floating pieces of ice appeared? There might be some danger hidden below. Just like that, he only controlled his sword and flew across the lake, approaching the dancing lotus in the middle bit by bit. Seeing Song Wan go over, Jiang Yuqing looked at the remaining people. That dancing lotus is very strange. If we work together, the chances of success might be higher. The scene of Elder Qiushi being dragged under the ice layer was still vivid in his mind. Jiang Yuqing didn't dare to guarantee that Song Wan could do much better than Elder Qiushi alone. Xiahou Rong nodded. That makes sense. There's strength in numbers. If we work together, we can take care of each other. Then, he also tiptoed and walked forward. Jian Shai looked at Yuqi Song. The 2 of them exchanged glances and moved out together. Song Wan heard their conversation clearly and couldn't help but look back. Seeing that these people had indeed caught up to him, his hanging heart finally calmed down. No matter what, the more people there were, the more confidence they had. Jiang Yuqing was at the back and also followed. Originally, he didn't want to do this. After all, he had seen with his own eyes how terrifying Mirror Lake was. Moreover, his body had not fully recovered yet. There were a few wounds on his body, and for some reason, his recovery speed was much slower than before. If it was in the past, it would have been healed long ago. There was no need for him to worry about it at all. But now, it kept going back and forth. Who knew if it was because of that tree root? However, since the seniors had already made their moves, he couldn't just stand by and watch. The few of them approached one after another. Finally, they formed a circle around the dancing lotus. It was noon, and the sun was hanging high in the sky. The bright sunlight shone on the surface of the ice, reflecting rays of dazzling light. However, they did not cover their eyes. Instead, they stared at the dancing lotus in front of them. The palm-sized flower had a total of 5 petals. Every petal was a translucent pinkish-white color, as if it was carved out of crystal jade. There was a thin layer of frost on the petals, making them look cold and noble to the extreme. So this is the dancing lotus. Song Wan couldn't help but mutter softly. It was a top-notch medicinal herb that only existed in legends. It was rare to see it in 100 years. He licked his slightly cracked lips, and greed and desire flashed across his eyes. He kicked with the tip of his foot, flipped his sword, and instantly held it tightly in his hand. From the looks of it, he clearly planned to cut it directly with his sword. Jiang Yuqing said, "Hold on." Song Wan was stunned. "What's the matter?" Jiang Yuqing looked at the sword in his hand and frowned. Back then, Elder Qiushi used a sword. They were standing outside at that time, and it was close to night, so they couldn't see clearly. However, he remembered clearly that Elder Qiushi was indeed dragged down after using a sword. It happened in the blink of an eye. Song Wan's heart skipped a beat. He hurriedly kept his sword and looked at the dancing lotus in shock. This thing is actually so strange. If using a sword doesn't work, how do we take it? We can't use our hands, right? Wouldn't that be more dangerous? Jiang Yuqing looked at Jian Shai and Yuqi Song. What do the two of you think? Both of them were celestial physician. Logically speaking, they should be more knowledgeable about this. Yuqi Song looked at the dancing lotus and sighed softly. Actually, to take this dancing lotus, it's both simple and difficult. The dancing lotus only blooms once every 500 years. Each time, it blooms for 5 years. If no one plucks it within these 5 years, it will become a seed again and go through another 500-year cycle. Therefore, it's most suitable to pluck it while it's still blooming. The medicinal effects are also the best. However, the dancing lotus is a rare treasure. Also, it's different from other treasures. It usually doesn't have high-level fiends guarding it. This causes its defense and attack to be extremely strong. If you want to pluck it safely, you need to use fresh blood as a guide. Jiang Yuqing frowned. Fresh blood as a guide? What do you mean? The smell of fresh blood will cause the dancing lotus to fall into a short slumber. As long as you smear blood on it, you can reduce its danger to the minimum. Song Wan interrupted. Then, this doesn't seem difficult. Jian Shai sneered. It's not difficult, but the cultivator must be at least a stage 8 warrior. Since you make it sound so easy, why don't you do it? Song Wan was very unhappy with this mocking tone. No matter what, he was still a peak stage 8 warrior. Could it be that he couldn't even take back such a small dancing lotus? What's so difficult about this? He clenched his teeth, raised his sword, and slashed his palm. Scarlet blood gushed out instantly and dyed his entire palm red. Then, he took a deep breath and stretched his hand forward. The dancing lotus swayed gently with the wind and didn't have any abnormalities. Song Wan calmed down and was about to grab the stem of the dancing lotus. Suddenly, the sound of something breaking through the air came from afar. Swoosh! The sound was sharp. The wind whistled. It went straight for Song Wan's glabella. Song Wan was shocked and immediately retreated while brandishing his sword. Clang! The sound of sharp weapons clashing suddenly came. Song Wan felt as if something had hit his sword harshly, and he instantly felt like he was bearing a heavy weight. His arm was directly numb from the shock. Song Wan took 2 steps back in a panic before stabilizing himself with much difficulty. He looked up in shock and anger, only to see a palm-sized piece of ice that had just split neatly from the middle and fell onto the surface of the lake. He looked down and saw that there was a missing piece on the ice layer not far away. Everyone was shocked when they saw this scene. To be able to casually use such a piece of broken ice to easily block Song Wan's attack and even gain the upper hand, the other party's ability was obvious. Song Wan's heart trembled slightly. Who? After a while, the air in the distance suddenly rippled. A tall and slender black figure walked out from within. His voice was low and casual, like the wind brushing past the strings of a zither, but it also carried a superior and unparalleled arrogance. "Sorry, that's my wife's flower. Digression, I won't be adding it today. Tomorrow at 12 a.m., please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from AI Network." Chapter 786. The person was wearing a black brocade shirt and didn't have any extra accessories. His long hair was draped over his shoulders, and he had a lazy and cold aura all over his body. He wore a silver mask that covered his face. Only a pair of eyes that were as deep as the starry night was like a whirlpool that had a fatal attraction. It was as if one would unconsciously sink into it if they looked at it any longer. Seeing the person, Song Wan and the others were secretly shocked. This man's aura was extremely obscure and powerful, and he was only stronger than them. Song Wan swallowed his saliva with difficulty. Who exactly are you? Who I am isn't important. That man's voice was casual as he chuckled softly. What's important is that you can't touch this flower. He's here for the dancing lotus? They looked at each other. Song Wan frowned and couldn't help but retort. Everything has a first come, first served rule. We came first, so this dancing lotus naturally belongs to us. Even if you're powerful, you can't be so unreasonable, right? His tone was already very restrained. If it were someone else, Song Wan would have chased after them long ago to teach them a lesson. However, this man in black's strength was unfathomable. They didn't dare to use force and could only start to reason with him. That's strange. This dancing lotus is still growing in the lake. How did it become yours? Could it be that this first come, first serve rule is based on who sees this dancing lotus first? That man wasn't angry. Instead, he laughed as if he heard a joke. Song Wan's face flushed red, and he was a little embarrassed. He also knew that what he said just now wasn't reasonable. They came to this mirror lake first, but in reality, they didn't successfully take the dancing lotus away. They didn't even touch it. It was indeed unreasonable to say that this dancing lotus was his. Song Wan wanted to continue but was silently stopped by Jiang Yucheng. Jiang Yucheng stepped forward, cupped his hands, and asked very politely, "I'm Jiang Yucheng." "I'm Jiang Yucheng. May I know who you are?" Almost everyone in the Tianling dynasty knew of Jiang Yucheng's name. His original identity as the eldest young master of the Jiang mansion was actually not worth mentioning. But because he was once the empress concubine's fiancé, he also rose with the tide and his fame increased by a lot. Jiang Yucheng introduced himself. On one hand, he hoped to know the other party's identity. On the other hand, it was a subtle deterrent. If the other party knew what was good for them, they should back off. The black-clothed man raised his eyelids slightly as a glimmer of light flashed through the depths of his eyes. "You are not qualified to know who I am." He said these words very softly and indifferently, but they carried a majesty that no one dared to disobey. Jiang Yucheng was stunned. Then, he felt as if his face had been slapped twice. It was burning with pain. He had never heard anyone speak to him like that before. In comparison, the other party seemed to be high and mighty while he was as lowly as an ant. His expression became somewhat unsightly, and his voice also became cold. "Aren't you being a little too arrogant?" Even if the other party's strength was tyrannical, he couldn't be so condescending. This mirror lake was still the territory of the Tianling dynasty. Jiang Yucheng suppressed the anger in his heart and kept searching in his mind. When did the Tianling dynasty have such a person? But after thinking for a while, he still couldn't find anything. Because this black-clothed man couldn't match up to any of the top experts in his impression. Could it be that the other party was some hidden figure, or perhaps he wasn't from the Tianling dynasty at all? This dancing lotus grows in Mirror Lake. Those who have the strength can obtain it. If you want it, feel free to come and snatch it. Jiang Yucheng said angrily. They had 5 people on their side, but the other party only had one. No matter how strong he was, it was wishful thinking to fight 1 against 5. The black-clothed man sighed softly. My madam told me not to act rashly. Jiang Yuqing sneered in his heart. This person was most likely afraid, but he still said it in such a dignified manner. If you have changed your mind, feel free to leave now. For the sake of this dancing lotus, we won't argue with you so much. If possible, Jiang Yuqing still hoped to get rid of the other party as soon as possible. He didn't want to get involved in any trouble. The black-clothed man laughed softly and said slowly, I've already said before that the flower belongs to my madam. Don't you understand? His voice gradually turned cold, and until the last syllable, it already carried a biting cold murderous intent. As soon as he finished speaking, he raised his hand. It was a slender, white, and well-defined hand. At first glance, it looked like it was carefully carved from white jade that was suffused with a cold light. Then, his index finger gently pointed forward. Buzz! A black force flew out like a sharp arrow. The sound of breaking air was sharp. A powerful pressure suddenly descended. An indescribable sense of danger welled up in his heart. Jiang Yuqing suddenly opened his eyes wide, and his pupils shrank. At this moment, he seemed to have been enveloped by the murderous intent. He retreated without a second thought, wanting to use his fastest speed to escape. However, after trying, he realized that his body was already unable to move. He was actually completely controlled by the other party's pressure. No matter what, he still had the combat power of a stage 7 warrior, but in front of this man, he didn't even have the right to escape. At this moment, Jiang Yuqing finally understood that the other party's strength was much stronger than they had expected. In the blink of an eye, the black origin power had already arrived in front of him. Qi! That force suddenly passed through the middle of Jiang Yuqing's chest. Blood and flesh splattered in an instant. The clothes in front of his chest were rapidly dyed red. Jiang Yuqing only felt a chill in his chest. After a short pause, intense pain engulfed him. The black-clothed man seemed a little regretful. Unfortunately, this is as far as you can go. He wanted to directly kill Jiang Yuqing, but his madam hadn't done anything yet, so he naturally had to keep him alive. Eldest young master. Seeing this situation, Song Wan and Xiahou Rong were shocked and hurriedly ran over. Eldest young master, are you okay? Everything happened too quickly just now. When that man attacked, they didn't even have time to react. By the time they realized what happened, Jiang Yuqing was already injured. Jiang Yuqing clutched his chest, and warm blood flowed out. He hurriedly took out an elixir and swallowed it. For some reason, there was a faint burning pain in his lower abdomen. But at this moment, his chest was pierced through, and there was a bloody hole dripping with blood. He couldn't care so much. He opened his mouth and wanted to say something, but when he saw the black-clothed man, he couldn't say anything. That pair of eyes, indifferent, cold, and noble. A deep fear rose from the bottom of his heart. Suddenly, a white light flashed across Jiang Yuqing's mind, and he looked at the other party with a horrified expression. You are the Biyao buildings. You are the Biyao buildings. Chapter 787. His strength was unfathomable, his identity was mysterious, and he kept mentioning Madam. Wasn't this completely in line with the person behind 100 Herbs building that they had investigated previously? On the surface, 100 Herbs building was managed by Yu Ling, the manager, but anyone with a bit of insight could tell that 100 Herbs building had a true master. However, no one in Xiling City had ever seen this person. Even Jiang Yuqing was no exception. He had wanted to meet this mysterious person more than once, but he never had the chance. He didn't expect to meet him here. The man in black didn't seem to care about his words at all, and his fingers moved slightly. A breeze blew past, and the dancing lotus swayed gracefully. A layer of transparent barrier suddenly enveloped him. Xiahou Rong wanted to approach, but he was suffocated by the powerful aura that spread out from above. They looked at each other. Now, it was even more difficult to take the dancing lotus away. Song Wan asked worriedly and nervously, "Eldest young master, what should we do now?" Jiang Yuqing was seriously injured, and his situation didn't look good. The remaining few of them might not be that man in black's match. Even if they worked together, it would be very difficult to take back the dancing lotus. Jiang Yuqing gritted his teeth, and his lips and teeth were filled with the thick smell of blood. His chest and abdomen were surging, and his vision was turning black. His body hadn't completely recovered, and now that he was injured again, it was even more serious. For safety's sake, they should leave as soon as possible and not face this man directly. But that dancing lotus, he took a deep breath and said, "I'm fine. The dancing lotus is extremely important to Her Majesty. Please work together and take it back." Jiang Yuqing's words shocked the few of them. "Eldest young master, have you thought it through? The dancing lotus is important, but you can't ignore your body," Song Wan said anxiously. He glanced at the man in black from the corner of his eye, and his heart tightened. His arm was still numb and throbbing with pain. He was certain that he was definitely not the other party's match. This man was definitely the strongest he had seen in his life. If he continued to be so forceful, perhaps all of them would suffer in the end. Jiang Yuqing naturally didn't want to give up his life. But the dancing lotus was too important. He had to find a way to wake His Majesty up. If he missed this dancing lotus, who knew how long he would have to wait for the next opportunity? He shook his head. His Majesty's health is more important. Please, at this moment, the ice on the lake began to spread faster. The man in black lowered his eyes to take a look. His eyes moved slightly as he chuckled. "Looks like it's almost time." He didn't want these people to see what happened next. Thinking of this, he raised his head and looked at them. Then, with a slight movement of his palm, a black ball flew out from his palm. That round ball grew in the wind. In the blink of an eye, it spread into a huge net. "Retreat." Jian Shai made a prompt decision and retreated without hesitation. But even though they were fast, that thing was even faster. With a swoosh, they were all enveloped by the huge black net. The black net once again condensed into a sphere and rapidly retreated. Their line of sight was instantly blocked and they fell into darkness. After an unknown period of time, the darkness in front of him finally dispersed. The restraining force around them suddenly disappeared. They were finally able to look around and discovered that they had already been expelled from Dahuang Swamp. Jian Shai sucked in a breath of cold air. Who exactly is that person? How can he have such means? One had to know that they had to transfer through 2 transportation arrays to enter Dahuang Swamp. But that man in black actually chased them here so easily? Jian Shai knew that he couldn't do it. In fact, almost no one in the entire Tianling dynasty could do it. Yuqi Song suddenly said, "Although that person chased us out, he didn't kill us." Although Song Wan and Jiang Yuqing were injured, he didn't take their lives in the end. Song Wan was still all right. As for Jiang Yuqing, perhaps because he spoke a little impolitely earlier, the other party also hit him a little harder. But in the end, he still spared Jiang Yuqing's life. Otherwise, with his ability, it would be easy to kill Jiang Yuqing. Xiahou Rong sighed deeply. Fortunately, Jiang Yuqing's face was pale, but his eyes were very gloomy. Fortunately? What was there to be thankful for? Could it be that he had to kneel down and thank the other party for not killing him after that man in black severely injured him? He had lived for more than 20 years and had never suffered such humiliation. In other people's eyes, the other party might have let them go because he gave them a way out. But in Jiang Yuqing's eyes, that wasn't the case. This only made him feel aggrieved. Angry. Resentful. He was proud by nature and was unwilling to fall behind others in any aspect. Now that he was crushed by the other party without any suspense, how could he feel comfortable? That man in black actually didn't care about them at all. Thinking of this, anger attacked his heart and he spat out another mouthful of blood as usual. Song Wan hesitated and asked, "Then what do we do now?" Eldest young master, your body can't be delayed. At the mention of this, Jiang Yuqing was even more annoyed. It was fine that they returned without any results the last time, but this was already the second time. Moreover, they specially invited these powerful people to come together, but they still ended up with nothing. What about Her Majesty? It was getting closer and closer to his wedding with Shangguan. If Her Majesty didn't wake up, just now, you said that person was from 100 Herbs Building? Yu Qi-song suddenly asked. After sending those people out, the man in black walked forward and finally stood in front of the dancing lotus. He looked down and his originally cold and indifferent eyes seemed to have a layer of frost melted as slight ripples appeared. I haven't been here for a while and you've been pestered by that thing? His voice was low and seemed to have a trace of a lazy smile. As he spoke, he waved his sleeves lightly. The ice surface suddenly cracked. The dancing lotus swayed gently. On the stem, rays of light reflected. Looking carefully, it turned out to be a silk thread thinner than a hair wrapped around its stem. The man in black hooked his finger slightly. The thread broke apart, flew up, and landed in his palm, becoming a messy ball. Looking at it like this, it could be barely seen that this thing was slightly green. A cluster of golden flames suddenly ignited in his palm. That ball was instantly burned to ashes. He said lazily, "It's fine to bully my wife, but you actually dare to cheat. You're too shameless." The ice layer on the lake began to gradually shatter. Some of the floating ice also slowly melted. On the mirror lake, the waves were sparkling, and it was a quiet and peaceful scene. Suddenly, a roar broke the silence here. Roar. This sound almost shook the mountain forest and spread far and wide between heaven and earth. The man in black looked up. Well, it seems that a certain person's recent training results are very gratifying. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 788. With a thought, his tall and slender figure instantly disappeared from where he stood. The sun shone brightly and shone down. The mirror lake, which gradually regained its calm, reflected the blue sky, which was very moving. The frost on the dancing lotus had unknowingly dissipated, and the translucent pink and white petals were sparkling as they moved with the wind. Not only did this roar reach the mirror lake, but the few people in the mystic forest also heard it clearly. The few people who were originally waiting all turned around with different expressions. Mu Hongyu couldn't help but ask, "What was that roar?" "That roar just now, what kind of magical beast was it? It must be a high-level fiend to be able to cause such a commotion, right?" Lei Laosi chuckled and looked over with an excited expression. "High-level fiend? I'm afraid it's more than that." Yi Ranran exclaimed and realized that he had lost his composure, so he hurriedly covered his mouth. Could it be another legendary fiend? Lei Laosi looked at Qin Yi. "Big brother, what do you think?" Qin Yi narrowed his eyes and replied after a while. "It's indeed a legendary fiend. However, it sounds like it came from the Red Moon Desert. The mystic forest was basically under his control. If any legendary fiend appeared here, he would definitely notice it immediately. This roar came so suddenly, so it must have come from the Red Moon Desert." However, what surprised him was that even if it was a legendary fiend, it was still shocking that its roar could travel so far from the Red Moon Desert. This legendary fiend's abilities shouldn't be underestimated. Red Moon Desert? That far? The few of them were shocked. Mu Hongyu tilted her head, and a trace of curiosity appeared on her face. Speaking of which, there are quite a lot of rumors about the Mystic Forest and Mirror Lake in Dahuang Swamp, but only the Red Moon Desert seems to be very mysterious. When we came, we only took a quick look. It was an endless golden desert with rolling heat waves. Magnificent, majestic, and majestic. Before she came, she even did some research on Dahuang Swamp and realized that the description of the Red Moon Desert was the least. After looking at it for a long time, she still couldn't figure it out. Qin Yi restrained his expression and said seriously, "You can't go there. None of you are allowed to casually approach the Red Moon Desert. If you hear anything, pretend that you didn't hear anything. Do you understand? Mu Hongyu originally said it casually, but she didn't expect Qin Yi to instruct or warn her so seriously. She quickly straightened her back. Got it. Red Moon Desert. It was the time of the day when the sun was at its brightest. The golden desert was boundless. The ground was boiling hot, and heat waves were rolling. This place was like a huge steamer, stuffy and hot. There seemed to be flames burning under the ground. On the undulating sand dunes, a white figure was standing. It was Shua. In fact, it had already turned into an earthy yellow color, and its entire body was dirty. Compared to before, it had lost a lot of weight. However, the aura on its body was much stronger than before. It didn't stop to rest as it continued to run through the vast desert. Finally, it reached the standard and was able to rest for a while. Shue could not help but let out a long howl. She looked at the sand dunes in the desert with tears in her eyes. It's alive. A tall and straight black figure gradually appeared in front of it. Shue's tears hung at the corners of its eyes, but they could not fall. It was very awkward. As I placed all my attention on training, I didn't notice that my master actually came. A baby-like voice slowly sounded. You still dare to come? That man took off his mask and revealed a noble and devilish face. It was Rongxiu. Digression, 60 Clock mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from the Love Network. Chapter 789. Rongxiu chuckled, as if he did not hear the dissatisfaction and murderous intent in his words. He nodded slightly. Greetings to the three seniors. It has been a long time since we last met. You seem to be more energetic than before. Whoosh. A cloud of yellow sand suddenly swept up from the ground. It transformed into a long sword and pierced towards Rongxiu. The scorching hot air was instantly torn apart by a black hole. A biting cold attacked. It went straight for Rongxiu's glabella. Rongxiu looked up slightly with a calm expression. His deep phoenix eyes were as pure and unfathomable as the starry night. His cold and undisciplined eyes finally flashed with a trace of seriousness. He held a long silver sword in his hand. Immediately, the sword rose. The sword fell. Whoosh. This sword movement was extremely simple. There were no fancy moves. It only gathered a terrifying force and fell straight down. The sword light flew out. It broke through the air. Two streaks of sword energy met the attack head-on. The hot golden sand was like a hurricane that swept past, and the yellow sand flew everywhere. Two deep grooves appeared on the sand. Clang. A crisp sound of collision was heard. The two streaks of sword energy transformed into countless streaks of light. A violent aura erupted from the middle and swept wildly in all directions. Seeing this, Shue immediately buried its head in its paws. It had been here for so many days. It did not learn anything else, but it had trained its instinct to avoid the wind and sand. Although it was already covered in dust, its master was here after all. If it could save it, it would do its best to save it. Shue's fur danced wildly in the wind. Fortunately, its body had become much stronger recently, and it was still very stable in the wind. After a while, the waves gradually calmed down. Shue crawled out from a pile of sand. Its body shook violently as it looked at its master. Rongxiu was still standing in the same spot. His feet sank half an inch into the sand. He tidied his clothes. Actually, he was still as clean as new. Not a single grain of sand was on him. It could be seen that he had dealt with this move with ease. Rongxiu cupped his fists and smiled faintly. Thank you for your guidance, senior. After a while, the baby-like voice sounded again. I haven't seen you for a few years, and you've already cultivated to such a level. No wonder you're so arrogant. Senior, you're mistaken. In front of you, I don't dare to offend you at all. How is this arrogant? Rongxiu raised his eyebrows slightly, but his tone was very sincere. Dugu Mabao snorted. Lan Xiao couldn't help but interject. Actually, it doesn't matter if you're insolent or not, but your face hasn't changed much. It's still as annoying as before. His voice sounded sour. Diwu Zhangzi couldn't help but say, Lan Xiao, can you have even one chance to see someone for the first time? Isn't that about their face? Lan. Diwu Zhangzi thought to himself that he really had a problem. He actually hoped that Lan Xiao could correct this problem. Senior, you flatter me. Lan Xiao was speechless. He was a little sad. Damn it, there's actually a man who's more shameless and narcissistic than me in this world. He boasted that he had reached the peak in this aspect, but every time he met Rongxiu, he was always one step behind. He would always return empty-handed and be angered half to death. Dugu Mabao couldn't help but say coldly, damn pervert, can't you stop for a while at your age? Is this the main point? The main point is the girl. Lan Xiao was furious. Who are you calling old? That's right, Big Bao, you still have to grow for a few hundred years before you can reach my waist, ah. Lan Xiao's voice stopped abruptly after a short and sharp cry. Rongxiu looked at the void in front of him and said, it's been a few years. Seniors, you're not even willing to come out and meet me? Dugu Mabao snorted coldly. If the girl is here, we'll naturally come out to meet you. But you're the only one here now. Why do we have to go out? Rongxiu's expression changed slightly. He rubbed his brows helplessly and found it funny. It's still the same as before. Rongxiu, you're a smart person. You should know why we're looking for you this time. Dugu Mabao's voice sounded much more serious with a hint of coldness. What's the matter with you, The moment he said that, the surrounding space seemed to have frozen. Shui froze and didn't dare to move. The surroundings were clearly hot, but at this moment, it felt bone-piercing cold. It was as if a wave of coldness was spreading from all directions. It looked at its master worriedly. Rongxiu's expression became much calmer. He didn't speak for a long time. Until Dugu Mabao and the rest thought that Rongxiu wasn't going to say anything, he finally spoke. Originally, you and I had promised to visit you again, but a lot of things happened in the past few years, so we haven't been able to come. Please forgive us, seniors. Rongxiu's tone was very calm, as if he was talking about something unrelated. But if one listened carefully, they would realize that under the seemingly calm sea, there were endless waves surging, as if this peace would be broken at any time. After a moment of silence, Lan Xiao couldn't help but ask. And then? What the hell is going on? This Rongxiu was really too much. How could he only say half of what he wanted to say? Rongxiu paused. Please forgive me for not being able to tell you what exactly happened now. When you see her in the future, it'll be more appropriate for you to ask her. Why you're not going to say it clearly? Lan Xiao was a little surprised. Diwu Zhangzi couldn't help but say. There's no difference whether you, or you say it. Can't you just say it now? The two of them were very close. Wasn't it the same no matter who said it? Rongxiu shook his head. Although he was tactful, he was very determined. It's indeed better for her to say some things. There were too many things involved. It might not be a good thing to let them all know now. Besides, there were a lot of things that even she didn't know about. Seeing how determined Rongxiu was, the few of them knew that they wouldn't be able to get anything out of him. Lan Xiao snorted. If you don't want to say it, then don't say it. Anyway, we'll be able to see her soon. When the time came, he would definitely ask everything clearly. Big Bao, don't help him tame his beasts anymore. Let Little Snow go back with him. We'll wait here for her to come out. Shui, who had been forgotten, was filled with tears again. Can I finally escape from this sea of suffering? Rongxiu said seriously. Thank you seniors for taking care of Xue Xue. However, I'll continue to stay here for a period of time. So, it'll be good for Xue Xue to accompany you here. Is that okay? Xue Xue looked at its master in disbelief as if it couldn't believe that he actually dared to sell it in front of them. Dugu Mabao said, "It's fine if it stays. It's also fine if you don't want to say it. However, I have one last question. Were you the one who changed Yuger's body?" Translator, Endless Fantasy Translation Editor, Endless Fantasy Translation. Chapter 790. Chu Luiyue, who was trapped underground, was completely unaware of the changes in the outside world. She didn't even notice Rong Xiu's arrival. In the dark space, Chu Luiyue and the two Tian baby had already exchanged a few blows and were now in a stalemate. The thick and heavy space was the two Tian baby's divine domain, and it could basically control everything in here. As for Chu Luiyue, every move she made here was extremely laborious. When she used the same move, the origin power she consumed here was at least 2 or 3 times more than what she normally consumed outside. If it was someone else, they might not be able to hold on. But Chu Luiyue was different. She had too much origin power stored in her body, and now that she had broken through to the middle of the 5th rank, her control over origin power was much stronger than before. Naturally, she could use it more freely. She held the long yuan sword tightly with both hands, looked at the two Tian baby opposite her, and muttered in a low voice, "It seems that something happened outside." In this duel, she was actually at a disadvantage. But just now, for some unknown reason, the two Tian baby had undergone a slight change. The thin layer of frost that surrounded it had actually gradually disappeared. Following that, its strength had clearly weakened. Chu Luiyue had been with it for so long, and was very familiar with everything about it. Naturally, she was also very sensitive to its changes. The two Tian baby surrounding crystals had almost been completely devoured by her, so its remaining strength was actually not enough for it. It intermittently seized some energy from outside to fill its body, and used it to strengthen its own strength. It was also because of this that Chu Luiyue had been unable to completely take it down. It had an endless supply of energy supporting it, and it was extremely difficult to deal with it. Now that the layer of frost had dissipated, it didn't show any more signs of such a situation. This made Chu Luiyue suspect that something had happened outside. But no matter what, this was good for her. She raised her sword again and pointed it at the two Tian baby. "Now, are you still not willing to obediently admit defeat?" A vigorous aura suddenly erupted from the two Tian baby. Chu Luiyue sent out her sword. Long Yuan sword. The sharp and cold sword light flickered, and on the sword blade, 2 types of flames intersected. It emitted a terrifying pressure. This place had been completely sealed, so Chu Luiyue wasn't worried that someone would suddenly break in. Thus, she used her trump card the moment she attacked. The sound of the sword. The flames burned fiercely. Like 2 huge illusions, they surrounded the two Tian baby. The space around the Tian baby began collapsing again. Following that, the surrounding flames were also swallowed. Annihilation in the space is space. But, the flames the Tian baby, this the two Tian baby. Was SSSS these 2 flames SS1 was formed by the water droplets force, while the other was taken from the heavenly square cauldron. If someone was here at this moment and saw that the two Tian baby was being forced into such a state by a stage 5 warrior like Chu Luiyue, their jaws would definitely drop. Seeing that the situation wasn't good, the two Tian baby moved and suddenly dodged upwards. However, the 2 flames followed closely behind and soon surrounded the heaven-wrecking holy seed. The long Yuan sword chi finally arrived. Then, it fiercely fell. Bang! The 2 balls of energy collided. Rumble. Crazy aftershocks swept out in all directions. Violent sounds rang out continuously. A crack suddenly appeared on the ground. Chu Luiyue's pupils shrank. Then, she saw that the faint layer of light outside also began to sway. The space of the divine realm began to compress toward Chu Luyue. Chu Luyue's body began to ache as if there was a heavy object pressing down on her, and the force in hers force slowed down again. Chu Luyue's gaze was fixed on the 2 Tian baby in front of her, but she realized that the 2 balls of flame seemed to be greatly affected, and the flames became much smaller. She was shocked. Could this be the 2 Tian baby's true power? Just as this thought flashed through her mind, the 2 Tian baby suddenly glowed. Taizu suddenly shouted in a deep voice. "Lu Yu, retreat." Upon hearing this, Chu Luyue immediately went on her toes and rapidly moved backward without thinking. At the same time, she raised the black shield in front of her. Boom! Boom! The continuous and ferocious attacks caused Chu Luyue's hand, which was holding onto the black shield, to crack. Although the black shield blocked most of the impact, a small part of the force was transmitted to Chu Luyue's body through the black shield. In an instant, the blood in her chest and abdomen surged, and her lips turned pale. The heaven-wrecking holy seed was indeed much stronger than he had expected. Chu Luyue pursed her lips and quickly glanced at the 2 Tian baby, only to see that the light on it was even brighter. This power was clearly stored in its own body. In the next moment, the 2 Tian baby flew toward Chu Luyue. It was as if there was a layer of invisible barrier around it, blocking all the sword energy and flames outside. Wherever it passed, it left behind a black spatial crack. Chu Luyue felt a chill run down her spine, and her mind was constantly thinking of ways to deal with it. Soon, the heaven-wrecking holy seed arrived not far from her. For some reason, Chu Luyue felt a trace of ridicule and anger. In the next moment, a cold wind suddenly attacked her from behind. Chu Luyue was startled. She looked back. The same heaven-wrecking holy seed had appeared behind her at some point in time. It was flying straight toward Chu Luyue's dantian. It seemed that it was going to take the power in her body. Crack. A crack suddenly appeared on the pure gold armor. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from the Love Network. Chapter 791. This 2 Tian baby is a twin. The Taizu was shocked and angry at the same time. Chu Luyue's heart skipped a beat. Twin? Didn't that mean that there were indeed 2 Tian babies here? She immediately turned her head to take a look and found that the 2 Tian baby that she had been fighting with earlier was still floating in the air. This was not an illusion. There were indeed 2 Tian babies, one in front of the other behind. Chu Luyue was stunned. Even though she had made all the preparations to deal with this 2 Tian baby, she did not expect that there were actually 2 twins. Dealing with one was already difficult enough, let alone 2. While Chu Luyue was in a daze, the 2 identical 2 Tian babies flew towards her. Chu Luyue felt as if her internal organs were being squeezed together by something, as if they would explode from her chest in the next moment. She gritted her teeth as countless thoughts flashed through her mind. She had to dodge. Once she was hit by this 2 Tian baby, the consequences would be unimaginable. However, the black shield could only block one of them. What about the other one? The pure gold armor had already cracked. She was no match for it at all. Screech. A clear chime could be heard all of a sudden. Chu Luyue only saw a red shadow flash before her eyes. Dumpling was already in front of her. Dumpling! Chu Luyue exclaimed. Even the pure gold armor could not block the power of the 2 Tian baby, let alone Dumpling's body of flesh and blood. Even a divine beast would not be able to block it. Dumpling flapped its wings. The crimson flames swept out in a frenzy, quickly condensing into a huge barrier in front of it. The 2 Tian baby quickly flew over. Clang! Almost effortlessly, it pierced through that layer of barrier. Bang! The sound of the barrier shattering could be heard. Chu Luyue was blocked behind Dumpling. Her line of sight was completely blocked and she could not see anything. However, she had heard that sound clearly. Tuan, Chu Liuyue's heart skipped a beat at this moment. She hurriedly called for Dumpling. As long as Dumpling returned to her body, she could avoid this attack. However, Dumpling did not move. It was still firmly and stubbornly standing in front of her. Although they were in a contractual relationship, it was reasonable to say that all of Dumpling's actions had to be approved by Chu Liyue. If Chu Liyue summoned it, it would not be able to resist. However, because Tuanzi was now a divine beast, it had a certain degree of autonomy to a large extent. It was also because of this that it could continue blocking in front of Chu Liyue. Of course, it was also because all of this happened too quickly that no one could react in time. Chi. The sound of something piercing through flesh could be heard. It was dull and short. Chu Liyue's heart sank. She immediately looked up and saw that on Dumpling's left wing, there was a bloody hole the size of a fist. The two-tian baby was actually very small. It was only the size of an adult's knuckle. It had two sharp ends and a slight bulge in the middle, like a small shuttle. It was reasonable to say that the wound left by this thing would not be very big. However, in reality, because of the overbearing aura around it, when it pierced through something, the hole would often expand due to the terrifying power. At this moment, Dumpling was in such a state. In an instant, flesh and blood splattered everywhere. A few drops of warm blood splashed onto Chu Liyue's face. Before she could react, she saw the two-tian baby flying towards her. Chu Liyue's eyes turned scarlet. Were you the one who switched her body? Hearing this, Rong Xiu's eyebrows twitched slightly. The surroundings were incomparably quiet. They could even hear the sound of sand flowing slowly. The sun was blazing hot, but there was no wind at all. The surrounding air seemed to have become sticky and hot, as if it was difficult to breathe. Actually, Rong Xiu had only paused for a short while, but to these people, it felt like an incomparably long period of time had passed. Rong Xiu's thin lips parted slightly. Just as he was about to say something, his expression suddenly changed. He suddenly turned around and looked in the direction of the mystic forest. Her pure gold sacred armor was broken. He quickly said, "Seniors, something has happened in the mystic forest. I have to rush over immediately." "Excuse me." After saying that, he lifted his feet and was about to rush forward. "Wait." A cloud of yellow sand suddenly flew up and formed a fence in front of him, blocking his path. "What happened over there? Tell me clearly." This was the voice of the Dugu Mabao. The three of them could only come out on the night of the crimson moon every month. The rest of the time, they could only stay in this desert. However, they could more or less sense everything that happened in the entire Dahuang swamp. Everything was fine now. Why did Rong Xiu suddenly want to leave? Rong Xiu put on the silver mask and said concisely, "Her pure gold sacred armor is broken." "What?" Dugu Mabao was stunned for a moment and immediately denied it. "That's impossible. Although that thing is quite powerful, it's impossible to break the pure gold sacred armor." They had specially studied that thing in the past. After confirming that it hadn't matured yet, they were relieved to let the girl deal with it alone. Rong Xiu's voice seemed to be covered in a layer of frost. "I specially left a mark on the pure gold sacred armor. It's definitely not wrong." Hearing how certain Rong Xiu's tone was, the few of them also felt a little uneasy. Diwu Zhangzi hurriedly said, "Then go quickly. You must protect her." Rong Xiu nodded lightly and instantly disappeared. "Little snowflake, why aren't you following?" Lan Xiao added. Shui was originally worried about Chu Liyue. Hearing this, it was as if it had been granted amnesty. It raised its claws and instantly transformed into a bolt of lightning and rushed out. After the man and beast left, Lan Xiao couldn't help but say, "Seriously, if it weren't for the fact that we can't leave this godforsaken place, how could we not even be able to do such a small thing? This is great. We gave that kid another chance to be a hero and save the beauty. The most important thing is that the girl is fine. Who cares who saved her? Diwu Zhangzi snorted and had a rare temper. I'm just saying. But Big Bao, weren't you sure that that thing was fine? What's going on now? Lan Xiao asked unhappily. Dugu Mabao fell silent and didn't speak for a long time. Lan Xiao snorted coldly. If it's really because there's something wrong with that thing that made the girl hurt, without him and Diwu Zhangzi having to do anything, Big Bao would suffer to death. Let's see how you explain it to the girl later. After a long while, Dugu Mabao said slowly and firmly, she'll be fine. Dong. The crisp and melodious sound of the collision echoed in the dark and cramped space. Chu Luiyue stared in shock at the transparent square cauldron that suddenly appeared. It took her a while to react. Just now, she was about to risk her life. In the end, her vision blurred, and this heavenly square cauldron appeared on its own and blocked her. Most importantly, he had really blocked the heaven-wrecking holy seed. That sound was produced by the collision between the two. The two Tian baby actually bounced back after being hit by the counterattack. Chu Luiyue was dumbfounded. Lu Yu, your treasure is actually so powerful. Taizu's voice couldn't hide his excitement. Chu Luiyue heaved a sigh of relief in her heart. I didn't think, her voice stopped abruptly. A sparkling and translucent white bone slowly floated out of the heavenly square cauldron. This collision had actually caused the great phoenix dragon skeleton to be knocked out. Digression, after supper, everyone went to sleep. Tomorrow, at midnight, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 792. Previously, Chu Luiyue had carefully kept this skeleton in the heavenly square cauldron because she was worried that the great phoenix dragon race would discover its aura and chase after it. She didn't expect that the two Tian babies' collision would directly shake the skeleton out. Chu Luiyue's heart suddenly trembled, and she immediately put the skeleton back. Bang! The skeleton had just floated out of the cauldron when it was suppressed by Chu Luiyue. There was a collision echo from inside. Chu Luiyue was still in shock, and her eyes were fixed on the heavenly square cauldron. This time, the skeleton didn't come out again. But thinking of what had just happened, Chu Luiyue still felt a little uneasy. In that instant, that piece of bone was completely exposed. Would the great phoenix dragon race sense it? Yes. The legendary three-eyed eagle's indifferent voice sounded in her heart. Chu Luiyue was shocked. Really? The great phoenix dragon bloodline is one of the two strongest races in the world. They are extremely sensitive to their own race. Even if they are thousands of miles away, they can still sense evil intentions without any hindrance. The legendary three-eyed eagle's tone was much more serious. Previously, with the long yuan sword and the heavenly square cauldron suppressing it, this thing's aura didn't spread. But just now, Chu Luiyue's heart slowly sank. Originally, she still had a trace of hope, but the current situation was probably dangerous. Then what can we do? Chu Luiyue asked with a headache. She knew that she was no match for existences like the great phoenix dragon. The legendary three-eyed eagle fell silent. Taizu suddenly said. Actually, it's not that there's no way. If the great phoenix dragon race comes, they will definitely ask for this skeleton back. Lu Yu, why don't you use this skeleton on the legendary three-eyed eagle as soon as possible? This way, they won't be able to compete with you. Chu Luiyue was stunned. Did Taizu mean that she should help the legendary three-eyed eagle reconstruct its body now? This is indeed a solution, but Taizu still lacks the herbs needed to reconstruct its body. Taizu coughed. I remember that you already have the purple gold Bodhi leaf, right? This was enough. There should be some among the remaining long yuan swords. What? For a moment, Chu Luiyue thought that he was hallucinating. What do you think is inside the long yuan sword? Taizu paused for a moment, his voice drifting. It's those herbs that can help divine beasts reconstruct their bodies. I remember that there are still some left. However, it's mainly because you already have the purple gold Bodhi leaf. That's the most important thing. The hilt of the long yuan sword was a huge space. There were many treasures and riches that the Taizu had brought out from the Tianling god realm. Because there were too many of them, even Chu Luiyue didn't fully understand what was inside. Now that she heard from Taizu, she realized that there were even such things. Blood cloud divine crystal? Yes. Ink essence bamboo? Yes. Heavenly spirit true fruit? I think so too. The corners of Chu Luiyue's eyes twitched violently. Taizu felt guilty and hurriedly explained. Actually, this matter is complicated. I intentionally found these things back then. Although I used some of them, there's still a lot left. Anyway, it's definitely enough for you to use. I didn't think of this matter at first. After all, there are too many things. Ahem, I didn't tell you at first because I wanted to give you more opportunities to train. Taizu meant what he said. At first, he really didn't think of the existence of these things. It was only when he saw Chu Luiyue retrieve the purple gold Bodhi leaf that he finally remembered. But at that time, Chu Luiyue and the legendary three-eyed eagle weren't very anxious about this matter, so he didn't mention it. He wanted to let her find it first and gain more experience. In the end, if she really didn't find anything, he would take it out. He didn't expect to encounter today's situation. Luyu, are you angry with me? Taizu asked nervously. Chu Luiyue didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Taizu, why would I be angry with you? I can't thank you enough for helping me like this. It was just that this matter came too suddenly. She didn't expect it for a moment, so she was so shocked. Speaking of which, these things were Taizu's after all, and he had no obligation to give them to her. Now that her urgent need could be solved, she was indeed full of joy. However, judging from Taizu's words, he used to have a lot of these things. Even if he needed them for himself, he didn't need to leave so many behind. A trace of doubt flashed through Chu Luiyue's mind. But the situation was urgent at this time, so she couldn't ask in detail. She could only suppress the confusion in her heart. Bang! Another crashing sound was heard. Chu Luiyue immediately looked back. This time, it was the other one that struck the black shield. What made Chu Luiyue feel lucky was that this collision didn't leave any marks on the black shield. It was much better than the broken pure gold armor. Chu Luiyue's eyes narrowed slightly. This black shield was indeed of a higher level than the pure gold armor, and its defense was stronger. Her heart calmed down a little, and she looked at the other one. She could completely leave her back to the black shield. Now, she just needed to deal with this one. Her gaze fell on the heavenly square cauldron. With a thought, the transparent square cauldron slowly rotated and flew forward. The two Tian babies seemed to feel a threat and began to retreat. Chu Luiyue was delighted. The heavenly square cauldron seemed to be able to deal with this thing. The two Tian babies suddenly rushed forward. Chu Luiyue looked up. Then, she saw the other two Tian baby flying over. The two heaven-wrecking holy seeds were about to collide. Luyu, stop them. Once the two twins merge, it will be even more difficult to deal with. Taizu shouted in a deep voice. Chu Luiyue directly swung the long yuan sword. A biting cold sword light flashed. It flew between the two Tian babies. At the same time, the heavenly square cauldron slowly flew toward one of them. A transparent tongue of flame shot out from it. In just an instant, one of the two Tian babies was swept away by the transparent flame and then disappeared into the heavenly square cauldron. From the beginning to the end, everything was smooth and natural, without the slightest pause. It was as if the two Tian baby was just an ordinary toy. Even Chu Luiyue was secretly shocked. She thought that the heavenly square cauldron should be able to deal with the two Tian baby, but she didn't expect it to be so easy. In the next second, the second heavenly square cauldron was swallowed by the second flame. From beginning to end, only a few breaths of time had passed. The heavenly square cauldron quickly shrank and fell back into Chu Luiyue's hands. Chu Luiyue carefully looked at the small transparent square cauldron in her palm. Looking at it, she could vaguely see the skeleton of the great phoenix dragon and the two Tian babies inside. However, the two babies were separated, each occupying one side. Chu Luiyue blinked and couldn't believe that the two Tian baby was subdued so easily. Taizu suddenly asked, "What's the origin of the two Tian baby? What is the origin of this square cauldron of yours?" A better reading experience came from the Love Network. Chapter 793. Chu Luiyue shook her head. "I got it when I met the legendary three-eyed eagle, but I don't know what it is." She had asked the legendary three-eyed eagle before, but it didn't seem to be willing to say much. It only said that it was a sacred object. It was such a vague answer that it was as good as not saying anything. Chu Luiyue knew that she wouldn't be able to get anything out of it for the time being, so she put this matter aside for the time being. As time passed, she also realized that this thing seemed to be more mysterious than she had guessed. Whether it was the great phoenix dragon skeleton or the two Tian babies, it could easily swallow them and completely suppress their power. It was terrifying. Taizu couldn't help but say, "It's not an exaggeration to say that your luck is heaven-defying." First, it was the black pyramid, then the water droplet, and finally this transparent square cauldron. Even the black shield was somewhat unfathomable. Even the dragon abyss sword paled in comparison to these treasures. Any one of these things would probably cause countless people to go crazy over it. And Chu Luiyue actually had so many. There was no lack of geniuses in this world, but there were very few who could grow from geniuses to true experts. To become one of these people, talent and hard work were indispensable, but there was also one thing that was extremely important: luck. And Chu Luiyue had all of them. Others might not be able to encounter such a great opportunity even once in their lifetime, but she kept encountering it one after another. If someone like her couldn't become a top expert, it would be too unreasonable. Chu Luiyue's lips curled up. "Actually, I didn't expect this thing to be so powerful." However, this matter was finally resolved. The stone hanging in her heart finally fell to the ground. She let out a long breath and looked around. The space was cracking bit by bit. Cracks began to appear on the layer of faint green light. She had already put away the two Tian baby, so the divine territory it displayed naturally dissipated along with it. Soon, it turned into streams of light and disappeared, dimming bit by bit. The pressure on Chu Luiyue's body also gradually lessened. She looked at the heavenly square cauldron again with a solemn expression. She couldn't go out yet. The matter of the great phoenix dragon skeleton had not been resolved yet. Since he had everything, he might as well help the legendary three-eyed eagle reconstruct its body. With this thought in mind, Chu Luiyue said, "Taizu, may I trouble you to help me set up the barrier first?" The great ancestor knew what she was planning to do and immediately attacked without saying a word. A translucent barrier quickly appeared. Silver lightning could be vaguely seen swimming on it. Taizu had used a lot of Tianlei in the past, so he had fused a part of Tianlei's power into his own power. After isolating this space, Chu Luiyue felt slightly more at ease. She threw the heavenly square cauldron out, and it quickly returned to its normal size and landed on the ground silently. Dumpling. She summoned Dumpling back first. Tuanzi turned into a small one and went back to her shoulder, leaning on her shoulder with grievance and pitifulness. One of its wings drooped and was dripping with blood. The wound was a shocking sight. When Dumpling was still in the form of a blood ferret, it had always been very sturdy. Although it had been injured before, it rarely looked like this. Now that it had just become a divine beast, it had suffered such a serious injury. Chu Luiyue's heart ached when she saw it. She carefully cleaned its wound, took out medicine, and bandaged it. Then, she pretended to be angry. "Have you learned your lesson? Let's see if you dare to be so disobedient next time." Tuanzi whimpered and looked at her pitifully with a pair of magnificent eyes. It was so dangerous at that time. How could it avoid it? Even if there was only a 1 in 10,000 chance that she would be injured, it would still block in front of her without hesitation. After waiting for so long, they finally met again. How could it bear to let her bear the danger? Back then, she had directly sent it out in order to save its life. In the end, seeing Dumpling's sad and pitiful eyes, Chu Liuyue's heart softened. Okay, I won't scold you anymore. Go back and recuperate first, okay? Dumpling nodded. Its figure flashed and returned to Chu Liuyue's body to recuperate. In fact, divine beasts had strong self-healing abilities. This kind of injury could be healed in a short time. Chu Liyue took a deep breath and looked at the heavenly square cauldron. A huge black phantom suddenly appeared in front of her. Whoosh, its wings flapped. Its momentum was astonishing. It was the legendary three-eyed eagle. Compared to before, its phantom seemed to be more solid. Chu Liyue looked at its eyes steadily. Are you ready? The legendary three-eyed eagle's usually indifferent eyes finally revealed a glimmer of excitement. Even if it was cold and indifferent, it couldn't help but feel emotional at this time. It had been suppressed for thousands of years and was tortured in pain every day and night in the heavenly square cauldron. It almost couldn't take it anymore. It had imagined the scene of reconstructing its physical body countless times, but even it didn't have much hope and just treated it as a fantasy. Those who could do this in the world were all top-notch figures. How could Chu Liyue do it alone? However, it didn't expect this day to really come and so soon. Chu Liyue asked, I'm ready. I'm ready. How about you? The legendary three-eyed eagle nodded lightly. Chu Liyue pursed his lips slightly. Then, I'll start. When the two-Tian baby was kept in the heavenly square cauldron by Chu Liyue and the realm of the gods completely collapsed, the mystic forest outside was peaceful. In the quiet forest, a light breeze blew. Qin Yi was originally sitting cross-legged with his eyes closed to rest, but when he heard this movement, he suddenly opened his eyes. In his long and narrow eyes, a glimmer of light flashed quickly. There seemed to be some movement just now. He had set up an inescapable net in this forest, so he could sense any changes in the mystic forest. However, after sensing for a while, he didn't discover anything. It seemed like it was just an illusion just now. Qin Yi knitted his brows and stood up. The few people at the side looked over. Lei Laosi asked, Big brother, what's the matter? Qin Yi shook his head. Nothing. I'll go ahead and take a look. As he spoke, he walked towards the mother tree. The surroundings were quiet, and there didn't seem to be any changes around the mother tree. However, Qin Yi knitted his brows even tighter. I shouldn't be hallucinating. Roar. A roar suddenly came from above. Everyone raised their heads in unison and saw a muscular figure flying over at high speed. Lei Laosi exclaimed. It's the legendary fiend that roared just now. Qin Yi squinted his eyes. Could it be that it caused that movement? In the dim space, a black figure flitted past quickly. Very quickly, Rong Xiu saw that familiar figure below. However, it seems like she's fine. Chu Liyue seemed to have sensed something and suddenly looked up. The two of them met each other's eyes and looked into each other's eyes. Chu Liyue's heart suddenly skipped a beat. Digression, update at 6 p.m, mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from AI Network. Chapter 794. This pair of eyes actually gave her a very familiar feeling, as if she had seen them somewhere before. At first glance, they were as deep as the night sky, with some kind of fatal attraction. Chu Liyue opened her mouth, and a name seemed to be about to slip out of her mouth. You, however, at this moment, the man calmly turned his gaze away. There seemed to be a faint layer of mist in the depths of his eyes, covering those soul-stirring eyes. Chu Liyue suddenly came back to her senses and carefully sized up the person who had come. This was a mysterious man wearing a black brocade robe and a silver-white mask on his face. He was suspended in mid-air, looking down at her. Because he was completely black and had no extra accessories, he almost merged with the dark space behind him. She could barely make out that his figure was very tall. As for the rest, she couldn't see anything. Chu Luiyue stared at him for a while and suddenly blurted out, "First Master." After a short silence, the man finally spoke, his voice low and lazy. "You have good eyesight." It was indeed him. Chu Luiyue was actually shocked. She had never seen this person with her own eyes, but she had heard his voice last time in Yao Chen's imperial mausoleum. Now that she saw him, she didn't know why, but she felt that this person gave her a similar feeling to the first master that day. She had just asked tentatively, but she didn't expect to guess correctly. Chu Luiyue blinked and carefully sized him up again. Unfortunately, the surroundings were dark, and she couldn't see anything clearly. He was also wearing a mask, so she couldn't see anything at all. However, she quickly restrained herself. In the face of such a person, this kind of gaze was inevitably a little offensive. After all, this was the first time they had officially met. Chu Luiyue retracted her gaze and glanced at the legendary three-eyed eagle and the heavenly square cauldron in front of her. Before this person came, she had just prepared to help the legendary three-eyed eagle reconstruct its physical body. She hadn't done much, but he had appeared. Through this translucent barrier set up by Taizu, he should be able to roughly see the situation around her. If it had been someone else, Chu Luiyue would have immediately put all these things away. Anyone with a bit of eyesight would be able to tell that the legendary three-eyed eagle beside her was not an ordinary magical beast. However, this person had a mysterious background and a powerful background. Chu Luiyue believed that he would definitely recognize the legendary three-eyed eagle. As for the heavenly square cauldron, although there was nothing special about it at first glance, there was no guarantee that he would know about it. Chu Luiyue was well aware of the principle of treasuring a jade ring becomes a crime. However, the strange thing was that after recognizing that it was the first master, she actually heaved a sigh of relief in her heart. She didn't know why, but she was certain that he wouldn't steal her things. This feeling came out of nowhere, but that was what Chu Luiyue thought. Chu Luiyue didn't try to hide it even though this person could easily snatch her things away. Since he had already seen it, there was no point in hiding it anymore. If he really wanted something from her, why did he leave the Black Pyramid to her? Thinking of this, Chu Luiyue's heart moved. She bowed to the other party seriously. "I have to thank the first master for the previous matter." The other party had helped her many times in the open and in the dark, so it was only right for her to thank him. However, the other party didn't respond to her words. Instead, he asked, "Are you planning to help the legendary three-eyed eagle reconstruct its physical body?" Chu Luiyue's eyelids twitched. He really saw through it at a glance. She was secretly glad that she didn't think of deceiving the other party. She nodded and admitted frankly, yes. A fifth-rank warrior trying to help a mythological beast reconstruct its physical body. If this were to spread out, it would attract ridicule and disapproval from many people. However, the first master just nodded gently and didn't comment on it at all. Instead, he changed the topic and asked seemingly unintentionally, "This place should have been quite lively just now." The man's tone was lazy with a bit of carelessness. Chu Luiyue didn't care. The fight between her and the two Tian baby was indeed quite loud and left a lot of traces in the surroundings. She paused for a moment and asked tentatively, "First Master, I have something to ask you. Do you know what was in the pyramid that was obtained in the imperial mausoleum?" After Chu Luiyue asked, she nervously held her breath. This man must know something. Otherwise, he wouldn't have left a seal on it for no reason. But, what was it? Chu Luiyue thought for a long time but still couldn't figure it out. Now that she happened to see him, she naturally had to ask him. As the voice fell, the surroundings fell into silence. Chu Luiyue's heart seemed to be gradually clenched by something. Suddenly, the man swept down from above. Chu Luiyue didn't see his movements clearly and saw that he had already appeared not far in front of her. The space at the bottom wasn't small. The enchantment that Taizu helped Chu Luiyue only occupied about half of the space here. Reconstructing the physical body was originally a meticulous and long-term work. In order to successfully complete it, one must try to avoid external interference as much as possible. However, there weren't many requirements for the size of the space. The man jumped down and landed on the other half of the empty ground. He stood in the dark, and Chu Luiyue could only see his deep and quiet eyes. He seemed to chuckle softly. If I tell you now, then why did I leave the seal? Chu Luiyue, it seems that the first master is unwilling to say. Actually, this was also expected. It would be strange if it was really so easy to find out. Just as he said, then there was no point in leaving the seal. If it's not convenient for the first master to tell me, it's fine. But this thing seems to be very important to you, so why did you leave it here? This was also a question that Chu Luiyue couldn't figure out. With his strength, wouldn't it be a piece of cake for him to deal with this thing? I have my own reasons. The man said lightly, obviously not intending to explain. Chu Luiyue frowned slightly. This feeling of not knowing anything was really uncomfortable. Her tone also became cold. Since it's not convenient for the first master to say anything, then I won't ask anymore. If he didn't say anything, then so be it. Perhaps one day, she would be able to unlock that layer of the seal and secretly find out what was inside. If there's nothing else, first master, please help yourself. I still have things to do, so I won't say much. With that, Chu Luiyue turned around, intending to start reconstructing the legendary three-eyed eagle's physical body. She didn't mind this person watching. Anyway, no matter what, she would do what she had to do. However, at this moment, the man spoke again. Wait. Chu Luiyue stopped what she was doing and turned to look at him. First master, do you have anything else to say? There was a hint of a smile in the man's voice. You helped me guard this thing. As a reward, I will also do you a favor. Do you want to take off the armor on your body yourself, or do you want me to help you? Chapter 795. Pure gold armor. Chu Luiyue lowered her head and glanced at it. Just now, the two Tian baby had broken through the pure gold armor and left an inch-long crack on it. What did he mean? Your armor is not bad. If it's damaged, its defense will be greatly reduced. It's really a pity. Hearing this, Chu Luiyue asked with some uncertainty. Are you planning to help me repair this armor? The other party nodded slightly. You don't trust me? Chu Luiyue shook her head. That's not it. If you can help me, I don't know how to thank you. Previously, she had been worried about the damage to the pure gold armor. Generally speaking, if a yuan instrument was damaged, its effect would be greatly reduced. Most ordinary yuan instruments would be thrown away directly, while the higher grade ones would be repaired as much as possible. And this had high requirements for the person who repaired it. Very few people could do it perfectly. Therefore, the final result was usually barely satisfactory. Chu Luiyue didn't expect that he would take the initiative to help. Judging from his strength, he might be an expert in this aspect. Chu Luiyue hesitated for a moment before agreeing. Based on her current level, she couldn't completely repair the pure gold armor. She might as well let him give it a try. Anyway, the pure gold armor recognized its master. She wasn't worried that he would do anything. If he wanted to snatch something, he would have done it long ago. Why wait until now? Chu Luiyue had a thought, and a layer of faint golden light appeared on her body. Then, this light flew out and condensed into the shape of an armor in front of her. She waved her sleeve and sent the pure gold armor out. That man raised his hand, and the pure gold armor obediently landed in his hand. Rong Xiu looked at the pure gold armor in his hand and sighed. He wanted to help his wife, but he had to find such a dignified reason. It was tiring. He only took a glance and immediately saw the damaged part of the pure gold armor. He couldn't be more familiar with this thing. Back then, in order to help her refine those glass barriers, he had done a lot of research. However, he still had to go through the formalities. Chu Luiyue watched as the other party held the pure gold armor in his hand. After examining it for a while, he prepared to make his move. A wisp of black origin power flew out from his palm and rapidly transformed into a cluster of flames. With a flick of his finger, the black flame flew to the damaged part of the pure gold armor and began to burn. This person seems to be extremely proficient in this Tao. Taizu's voice suddenly rang out. Chu Luiyue had actually seen through this. After all, she had personally polished the cloud sky copper sword before. Around the black flame, the pure gold armor glowed faintly. Then, it became much softer. Chu Luiyue was secretly amazed. This person's control over the power of flames could be said to be peerless. The pure gold armor was hers, so she could naturally change its hardness according to her wishes. However, in the hands of others, it was usually just an ordinary piece of tough armor. This man does seem to know a lot about these things. Chu Luiyue calmed down and stopped looking at it. He turned his attention back to the legendary three-eyed eagle. There was no time to waste. Even if someone was beside her, she couldn't care less. She took a deep breath and removed all distracting thoughts from her mind. Then, a transparent karmic fire wrapped around the great phoenix dragon skeleton and slowly floated out. After this period of tempering, the skeleton seemed to have become even more sparkling and translucent. At a glance, it looked like a top-grade jade. Chu Luiyue held her breath and concentrated. A scarlet flame flew out of her hand. The two flames instantly intertwined. It burned fiercely. Soon, a faint trace of blood appeared in the skeleton. Chu Luiyue's eyes lit up. That should be the bloodline power contained in the skeleton. As long as this power was completely stimulated, it could fuse with the legendary three-eyed eagle. Chu Luiyue carefully controlled it. The two flames burned evenly. More and more traces of blood appeared in the skeleton. A faint pressure spread out from it. Buzz. The barrier was hit and let out a buzzing sound. Chu Luiyue frowned. The bloodline power contained in the great phoenix dragon skeleton wouldn't break through this barrier, right? Wouldn't that be troublesome? Just as she was thinking about how to deal with it, a fluctuation suddenly came from the side. A layer of faint black enchantment covered the previous enchantment. The buzzing sound instantly disappeared. With two layers of barriers, the movements inside would not be transmitted to the outside. Chu Luiyue looked sideways. Thank you, First Master. However, the man only waved his hand lightly, as if he didn't care. Chu Luiyue pursed her lips. There seemed to be more and more mysteries about this person. However, she didn't dwell on it for long and quickly continued. With the support of this barrier, the surrounding space became much more stable. Chu Luiyue's heart also became much more at ease. Rong Xiu's fingertips moved slightly. In the black flames, a golden light slowly flowed out, covering the inch-long damage on the pure gold sacred armor. His movements were very subtle. From Chu Luiyue's side, it was absolutely impossible to see this scene. He calmly raised his eyes and glanced at his wife. She was concentrating on condensing the great phoenix dragon skeleton. Rong Xiu narrowed his eyes slightly. Oh. She seemed to trust him too much, right? She actually dared to take out the great phoenix dragon skeleton so ostentatiously? Wasn't she worried at all? Since when did she trust other men so much? Thinking of this, Rong Xiu's mood suddenly became a little bad. Digression, it's already February here, Kevin. I'll go and sort it out. There's still a little at night, about 10 o'clock. Everyone can look at it together tomorrow. A better reading experience comes from the Love Network. Chapter 796. Mystic Forest. A white lion was floating quietly in midair. Qin Yi and the rest looked up at it. After a while, Lei Laosi couldn't help but ask, "Big brother, what kind of fiend is this? Why is it staying up there all the time?" They originally thought that it was going to charge down, but it actually stopped there after circling around twice. It didn't leave or come down. This caused the few people below to be at a loss as to what to do. Qin Yi also found it strange. Previously, he felt that there was a commotion in the mystic forest, and then this white lion appeared. When it stopped in mid-air, there wasn't any commotion in the surroundings. He could basically confirm that the commotion just now was caused by its arrival. However, he couldn't quite tell what kind of fiend it was and didn't know why it didn't do anything after coming here. However, judging from the current situation, it didn't seem to have any murderous intent, so it probably didn't come for them. Ignore it first. Alright. It's a legendary fiend after all, so we have to be careful. Lei Laosi scratched his head and muttered, a fiend that looks like a legendary fiend. Why have I never heard of a divine beast that looks like a white lion? When Yi Ranran heard this, he couldn't help but say, Big Brother Lei, is that a white lion? Its body seems to be yellow. Shue Shue, who was blocked outside by its master, was filled with resentment. It couldn't advance or retreat and secretly thought that its life was tough. When it heard this, its heart instantly trembled, and it couldn't wait to run away immediately. How embarrassing. Its originally perfect snow-colored fur was now stained with countless layers of yellow sand and became a dirty yellow color. Shue Shue roared resentfully. Roar. The forest shook instantly. However, the few people below weren't affected much. Yi Ranran was shocked and tugged at Mu Hongyu's sleeves. Hongyu, why do I feel like it's angry at me just now? It was originally a white lion, and it came from the Red Moon Desert, which is why it became like this. It definitely heard what you said just now, so it's naturally unhappy. Qin Yi turned around and explained. Don't forget that legendary fiends have almost the same level of intelligence as humans. Yi Ranran shrank back. So even divine beasts care about such words. Mu Hongyu gently patted her shoulder. Don't worry, Ran. I don't think it has any ill intentions towards us. Although it roared, none of them were affected by this power. It could be seen that it had deliberately avoided it. Only then did Yi Ranran feel relieved. Suddenly, Chang Wanzhou stood up. His movements were very fast and even a little hurried, which immediately attracted the attention of a few people. Qin Yi seemed to have predicted something. What's the situation? Chang Wanzhou's eyes seemed to sparkle. I think she should be coming out soon. The West Hill. Imperial Palace, Huayang Palace. Shang Wanwan was leaning against the bed. Chan Yi was kneeling beside her, feeding her medicine. Your Highness, this is the last decoction for today. Please drink it. As Chan Yi spoke, she carefully scooped a little with a spoon and brought it to Shang Wanwan's lips. Shang Wanwan's lips were pale as she weakly drank the medicine. The moment she took a sip, her slender brows immediately knitted tightly together. The bitter and fishy taste rushed straight at her, almost choking her. She forced herself to swallow this mouthful of medicine. Her stomach churned again, and she almost spat it out. But in the end, she still forced herself to swallow it. Chan Yi didn't dare to say anything else and continued to feed her medicine carefully. By the time Chan Yi finished feeding her this bowl, a thin layer of sweat had already formed on her forehead. She hurriedly put the things away and smiled pleasingly. Physicians said that your body has already taken a turn for the better. After you use this medicine today, you'll have to change the dressing tomorrow. As long as you rest well, your body will definitely recover as soon as possible. When Shang Wanwan heard this, she seemed to be unmoved. Gradually, a hint of mockery appeared in her eyes. She slowly touched her face and asked softly, what did he say? Then did he say when the scars on this consort's face would heal? Chani lowered her eyes. Physicians said that the scars on your face are a little troublesome and that you need more time. Shang Wanwan sneered. Do you really think this consort is stupid? Chani paused. Your Highness, you're very fortunate. You'll definitely have a way. You may leave. Shang Wanwan was already tired of hearing this kind of argument, so she waved her hand in annoyance. Chan Yi could only take her leave. Then this servant will stand guard outside. If there's anything you need, feel free to tell the servant. After saying that, she respectfully left. The moment the door closed, Shang Wanwan's expression instantly turned cold and resentful. Actually, her face was covered in scars right now, so she couldn't make any sort of expression. She also didn't dare to move carelessly for fear of tearing open the scabs on her face again. She could only vent all her emotions through her eyes. In the past few days after returning to Western Tomb, she had been living a life worse than death. That day, after that torment, her vitality had been greatly damaged, so she could only lie in bed to recuperate. She had used up a lot of her origin power, but fortunately, her Yuan meridian hadn't been damaged. This made Shang Wanwan feel a little better. But in the end, she discovered something even worse. The scars on her face seemed to be much more serious than normal wounds. No matter what method she used or what medicine she tried, there didn't seem to be any obvious effects. Every time she thought it was going to heal, it would mysteriously fester again. This happened over and over again. Her face was already completely unrecognizable. As a result, she could only hide here and not come out to meet anyone. Shang Wanwan was both angry and afraid. If her face really couldn't heal, what would she do in the future? She could still delay it for now, but she would definitely have to come out in the future. Especially since her wedding with Jiang Yuqing was getting closer and closer. On the day of the wedding, she still had to meet all the civil and military officials. Knock knock. A somewhat hurried knocking sound suddenly came from the door. Your Highness, this servant has something to report. What could happen at this time? Shang Wanwan frowned. Come in. Chan Yi pushed the door open and walked in quickly. Her expression was a little strange. Just as she walked to Shang Wanwan's bed, she directly knelt down. Your Highness, the prince consort and the others are back. Shang Wanwan was shocked. How could they be so fast? How long had it been? Not even half a month, right? Could it be that they had retrieved the dancing lotus so smoothly? Where are they now? I heard that the prince consort was injured and has returned to the Jianghu residence to recuperate. The others are waiting for you in Minghua Palace. Shang Wanwan's heart sank and she quickly asked, has the dancing lotus been retrieved? Digression, good night, everyone. Tomorrow at 12 o'clock, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 797. Chan Yi hung her head even lower. It seems like, there isn't, if they had succeeded in retrieving it, they would definitely send news immediately. But now, Jiang Yuqing had returned to the Jianghu residence to recuperate, and the others were already waiting in Minghua Palace. No one mentioned the dancing lotus. Basically, it was certain that they had returned empty-handed this time. Shang Wanwan suddenly sat up straight. Shocked and furious, she widened her eyes and spoke sternly. Nonsense. These people are all top figures in the Tianling dynasty. How can there not be anything? Jian Shai. Yuqi Song. Song Wan. Which one of them wasn't a famous figure? Even Grand Tutor Xiahou Rong was a peak stage 7 warrior. When these people joined forces, their strength was terrifying. How could there be no gains? With this movement, Shang Wanwan's injury started to hurt again. The scab on her face cracked again, and blood slowly flowed down. It was very painful. She sucked in a cold breath. Her body was in a terrible condition, and with her anger attacking her heart, she directly fell backward. Your Highness. Chan Yi exclaimed and hurriedly went forward to support her. Your Highness, you have to recuperate properly. Don't get angry. Shang Wanwan's face was pale, and 2 balls of flame seemed to be burning in her eyes. She pushed her away. Get lost. Useless trash. Get lost for this consort. Don't get angry. How could she not get angry after hearing this news? Chan Yi hurriedly knelt down again. Actually, she was also shocked when she heard this news just now. Who would have thought that these people would return empty-handed after joining forces? Chan Yi had already expected Sheng Wanwan's reaction, but she had no choice. This was a serious matter, and she didn't dare to hide this from Sheng Wanwan. Besides, could this kind of thing be hidden? Jian Shai and the others were still waiting in Minghua Palace. Why, Your Highness, you must calm down. Minghua Palace is still waiting for you to preside over the situation. It wasn't just Minghua Palace. Now that Jiang Yuqing had returned to his residence to recuperate, there were bound to be many things that Sheng Wanwan had to deal with personally. When Sheng Wanwan thought of this, her mind was in a mess. Preside over the overall situation? Was she supposed to meet people with her current face? Sheng Wanwan was full of resentment. She couldn't figure it out. Everything was fine before, so why did everything suddenly become so out of the blue? She had thought that after setting the wedding date, she would be able to wait for the wedding in peace. But in between, things kept happening one after another. Her face, Jiang Yuqing's wound, the black cavalry with heavy casualties. There was also the dancing lotus that couldn't be retrieved no matter what. Once the news got out, she didn't know what people would say about her incompetence. Previously, for the sake of creating a good reputation for herself, she specially brought so many people with her to the Great Desolate Swamp. In the end, he came back in a sorry state. She had hoped that they would be able to bring the dancing lotus back this time. That way, she would be able to answer to the outside world. Who would have thought that it was all in vain? From the looks of it now, however much fanfare she made back then was how much of a disgrace she was now. Sheng Wanwan suppressed the anger in her heart with much difficulty and said coldly, "Just say that I'm recuperating now and can't go out. Just invite Song Wan alone to come and see me. As for the others, it's been hard on them this time. Let them go back first." Yes. After Jiang Yuqing returned to Xiling, he rushed back to the Jiang residence immediately. In the room, Feng Shangyuan placed one hand on Jiang Yuqing's wrist. His brows gradually furrowed, and his expression became very solemn. After a while, he released his hand and looked at Jiang Yuqing, unable to conceal the shock in his voice. "Eldest young master, your body, it was just a trip to the Great Desolate Swamp. It had only been a few rounds. Why did his injuries suddenly become so serious? Did someone fight with you?" Feng Shangyuan asked very tactfully. Jiang Yuqing nodded but didn't elaborate and only frowned. "Is there a way to recuperate as soon as possible?" Feng Shangyuan sighed. "Eldest young master, you know your own body best, don't you? I'm afraid that you won't be able to recuperate completely without at least half a year. When it rains, it pours." Jiang Yuqing's expression became increasingly gloomy. His body had been continuously injured recently, and it was already extremely difficult to recuperate. Now that this was added, it would probably be even harder to recover. From start to end, that man only extended one finger. However, he didn't even have the slightest ability to retaliate and could only be completely crushed. Jiang Yuqing had never deeply experienced what it meant to be a natural chasm like now. In comparison, he was like a tiny ant, lowly and incompetent. Jiang Yuqing was born to be favored by the heavens and had always been stronger than others. When had it ever been his turn to be treated like this? What made him even more uncomfortable was that man in black didn't seem to care about him at all. The greatest form of contempt was indifference. Jiang Yuqing felt as if there was a stone in his heart, and he was extremely stifled. Feng Shangyuan was right. He did know his own body's condition best. "Is there really no other way?" he asked again with a sullen face. He definitely couldn't afford to delay for half a year. The wedding day was getting closer and closer, and there were too many things to do. Feng Shangyuan thought for a long time and finally said, "If you really want to, it's not completely impossible. It's just that I'm afraid you'll have to suffer a little." Then let's begin. Minghua Palace. Jian Shai and the others sat on both sides, and the main hall was silent. No one expected that the trip to Dahuang Swamp would end so carelessly. After they were chased out, they originally wanted to go again, but they found that the teleportation array had been sealed. This time, they had no other choice but to return. As for the dancing lotus, there was naturally no need to think about it anymore. They were all important figures in the Tianling dynasty, and their strength was superb. Who knew that they would end up in such a situation in the end? It was somewhat embarrassing. Jiang Yuqing was sent back to the Jiang residence to recuperate, and they went to the palace first. They planned to inform Shangguan of the matter first before letting her make a decision. Soon, someone came from outside. A palace servant hurried forward and greeted them one by one. Then, he said to Song Wan, "Her Highness the Third Princess is not feeling well now, and it's not appropriate for her to see all of you at the same time. Therefore, please go to Huayang Palace first." The few of them were not surprised by this. Song Wan was originally closer to Shangguan Wan, so it was normal for her to ask him to go over. Jian Shai couldn't help but ask, "How's the third princess's health? So many days have passed. Hasn't she gotten better?" It had been almost half a month since she had returned. It was said that she had been staying in Huayang Palace for the past half a month and almost never came out. Many things were handled in Huayang Palace. What kind of injury did she suffer that was so serious? One had to know that with her current status, it was easy for people to guess if she didn't show up for such a long time. It just so happens that Elder Song and I are both celestial physicians. Why don't we take a look at the third princess together? What do you think, Elder Song? Chapter 798. Yuqi Song nodded. That's good too. The third princess has a precious body, so we naturally have to take good care of her. The palace servant didn't expect them to say this and looked troubled. Miss Chani only said to invite Sect Master Song. I don't dare to make a decision. In the palace, who didn't live under Chani's orders? Chani had always been very strict with matters related to the third princess. If he brought these two over, Chani wouldn't dare to say anything about their status, but his own safety was hard to say. Jian Shai sneered and said jokingly, Chani trusts Chani deeply. We all know that Chani is deeply trusted and valued by the third princess. However, in the end, she is only a servant girl. Could it be that we need her permission to see the third princess? The palace servant hurriedly knelt down. That's not what I meant. It's just, what's there to just about? We're also concerned about the third princess's health, so we specially went to visit her. If the third princess really can't see us when we reach Huayang Palace, we naturally won't force her. This sentence made the palace servant speechless. It was fine if it was others, but Jian Shai and Yuqi Song were both top celestial physician in the Tianling dynasty. It was indeed reasonable for them to propose to take a look at the third princess. Xiahou Rong frowned slightly and said, Actually, we don't have to go. After all, there are still Zhuo Mingxi and a few other lords in the palace with superb medical skills. If we go now, we might disturb them instead. Yuqi Song interrupted him indifferently. Everyone is very worried that the third princess hasn't come out for a long time. Now, the eldest young master is injured and bedridden. If no one comes out to preside over the situation, it will be chaotic sooner or later. We're doing this for everyone's sake. Could it be that we'll harm the third princess? At this point, what else could the palace servant say? He could only bite the bullet and agree. Xiahou Rong's lips moved. He wanted to continue stopping them, but he couldn't think of any reason. Jian Shai glanced at him and chuckled. Lord Xiahou, you don't look too good. Are you tired from this trip? Why don't you go back and rest? Xiahou Rong immediately rejected this suggestion. Since all of you are going, how can I not go? When they returned, Jiang Yuqing didn't want Jian Shai and Yuqi Song to enter the palace. Obviously, he didn't want them to see the third princess. Now that he saw that he couldn't stop them, he naturally had to follow them, just in case. Therefore, they followed the palace servants to Huayang Hall. Soon, they arrived at their destination. Chan Yi, who was anxiously waiting outside the door, froze when she saw them arrive. The palace servant jogged over and explained the situation to Chan Yi while trembling with fear. The lords were worried about His Highness' health, so they came together and said that they wanted to take a look at His Highness. Chan Yi was shocked. Are they going to treat third princess? How could that be? Now, the third princess could not be seen in public at all. If these people were to see this, who knows what would happen? She first bowed respectfully to them before tactfully saying that it wasn't convenient for Shangguan Wan to meet so many people at once. Other than Song Wan, she could only invite the rest of them back. Jian Shai sneered in his heart. How was it that she didn't want to see people? She clearly didn't want to see him and Yuchi Song. At first, he was just curious, but now, he also felt that something was amiss. If Shangguan Wan wasn't guilty, then what was? Even if her health wasn't good, it shouldn't be so difficult to see a few people. Besides, his and Yuchi Song's medical skills were definitely among the top few in the entire Tianling dynasty. Yet, Shangguan Wan avoided them like snakes and scorpions. It was truly suspicious. Seeing that they were still unwilling to leave, Chan Yi could only say, Her Highness' health has always been taken care of by Lord Zhua and the rest. Could it be that you don't trust Lord Zhua? That's not the case, Jian Shai was about to refute when Yuchi Song suddenly said, Lord Zhua, our medical skills are very good. Of course, we can trust Zhua Mingxi's medical skills. Since that's the case, let Her Highness rest well. We'll take our leave first. Then, he really turned and left. Jian Shai froze for a moment and could only follow. Xiahou Rong heaved a sigh of relief and also left not long later. Soon, only Song Wan was left. Chan Yi said, Sect Master Song, please, Elder Song, why did you suddenly leave? Jian Shai followed Yuchi Song and frowned, feeling perplexed. Elder Song must have also noticed that there was a problem. As long as he continued to ask, he would definitely be able to dig something out. However, Elder Song suddenly stopped. It was truly strange. Yuchi Song said, Since she's unwilling to see you, why force her? Aren't you worried? There was clearly something fishy going on. Who knew what exactly she was planning to do? Yuchi Song suddenly laughed. Isn't she the most worried about herself? Shangguan Wan was ambitious. Yu had only been gone for less than 2 years, but she actually planned to replace her and even wanted to directly ascend the throne while Her Majesty was still unconscious. Anyone could tell what she wanted. She couldn't wait to hold all the power in her hands, afraid that others would snatch it from her. If she hadn't really encountered some trouble, why wouldn't she come out to meet people for such a long time? So many important officials in court could wait for a day or two, but they definitely couldn't wait forever. At this time, the most anxious person wasn't anyone else but Shangguan Wan herself. Jian Shai froze for a moment before returning to his senses. You're saying, on the other hand, I'm old and incompetent. I couldn't even retrieve a dancing lotus for the third princess. I'm really ashamed. After speaking, Yuchi Song continued walking forward. There's still no trace of Lu Yu and the rest. I'd better return to Qing Yuan Mountain and wait for their news. I won't get involved in other matters. Jian Shai clicked his tongue in his heart. Was Yuchi Song planning to spread the news that they didn't obtain anything from Dahuang Swamp? One could imagine how embarrassed Shangguan Wan would be then. He was indeed an old fox. In the past 2 years, Chongshu Pavilion had suffered a series of blows. Yuchi Song had also kept a low profile and endured a lot. He thought that they would never recover from this setback. Now, it was finally a little more fun. He had an idea and stroked his chin. Hey, why don't I go and meet Zhua Mingxi? He might really be able to get something out of him. Almost overnight, the news that Shangguan Wan had led troops to Dahuang Swamp, suffered heavy casualties, and failed to bring back a single heaven and earth treasure for the emperor spread throughout Xiling City. Later, she even specially sent Jian Shai and a few other top powerhouses to go, but they returned empty-handed. Although the palace had tried their best to suppress the news, it was basically useless. After all, their appearance on the day of their return had already attracted a lot of attention. For a time, rumors spread everywhere, and everyone in the city was talking about it. At Chun Feng restaurant, Jian Fengqi leaned on the couch and smiled unrestrainedly. This time, our third princess has completely lost face. Chapter 799. Shui Lu held the pipa in her arms. Her slender hands swept across the strings, and a string of light and pleasant tunes followed. She had always played mournful or melancholic tunes, but rarely played such cheerful tunes. Moreover, there was a hint of a smile at the corners of her eyes, showing that she was in a very good mood. Who told her to puff herself up at her own cost? She only has herself to blame for her current situation. Shui Lu's fingertips paused, and her willowy eyebrows raised slightly. Does she really think that Dahuang Swamp is a place where everyone can go? Back when Dahuang Swamp was pacified, Princess's reputation soared. She also wanted to give it a try, wanting to establish herself as the world's most filial daughter. However, she didn't think about whether she had the ability to do so. Dahuang Swamp was an extremely difficult bone to chew. It had been chaotic for hundreds of years, and it was only when Princess came to power that it was finally suppressed. Why did Shangguan think that she could command the winds and clouds in Dahuang Swamp? She has been in this position for a long time, so it's only natural that she would have such thoughts. Jian Fengqi smiled disapprovingly, his eyes filled with contempt. Didn't you see how arrogant she had been in the past 2 years? Now, this head-on hit had finally caused her to bleed. Shui Lu's red lips curled slightly. This position isn't for just anyone. I don't think she can stay here for long. That's not necessarily true. Didn't you see that the wedding is going through the procedures now? Jian Fengqi smiled wickedly. I really want to see what kind of scene it will be on that day. Shui Lu glanced at him and asked curiously, weren't you very worried about Chu Luyue and Mu Hongyu before? Why do you not look nervous at all now? That day, when he heard the discussions outside, his expression immediately changed. He jumped down from the window without a second word and grabbed the people to ask. Now, it seemed as if nothing had happened. Jian Fengqi's expression stiffened, and he twisted his neck uncomfortably. Even now, when he recalled his reaction that day, he felt that he had lost his composure. No, it couldn't even be described as simply losing his composure anymore. No one knew the fear that suddenly rose in his heart at that moment. Even now, it left a deep impression on him. However, these words were not easy to say. He coughed. I heard from Zhu Hong and the others that someone is helping Hong Yu and the others. There shouldn't be any problems. Actually, the reason why he was so relaxed was mainly because he saw that his father and Yuchi Song were very calm. The disciples that these two doted on the most were still in the great desolate swamp, yet they didn't seem to be nervous at all, so he naturally felt much more at ease. Shui Lu nodded in understanding. From the looks of it, there shouldn't be any major problems. She pondered for a moment and said, by the way, I saw someone the other day, but I'm not sure of his identity. Jian Fengqi asked curiously. Who is it? Shui Lu paused for a moment. She didn't say anything and only made a hand gesture. She gestured a 7. Jian Fengqi's expression suddenly changed. He sat up and stared at her. Are you sure? Shui Lu bit her lips. I don't know if it's him. Whether it was their appearance, figure, or aura, they were all different. But the look in his eyes was too similar. Where did you see him? Jian Fengqi hurriedly asked. Outside the Xiaohou residence. He seemed to be investigating something too. Shui Lu frowned slightly. But if it's really him, how could he have changed so thoroughly? Jian Fengqi was shocked. How could an ordinary person have anything to do with the Jianghu residence? He was silent for a moment, then said, I've seen him before too. Digression. 60 Clock mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. You're tuning into the Biyao's Wuxia Chronicles YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.